The fresh timber on the monastery's north wall glows like a rookie mistake in the morning sun. They reinforced the palisade, but they forgot to change the patrol frequency. To a trained eye, that isn't a defense, it's an invitation for a hostile audit. Norse expansion wasn't a random explosion of rage, it was a commercial operation with a very sophisticated risk assessment. The best of us honored our protection contracts, because a reputation for reliability pays more annually than a single raid ever could. We use the same ships to trade as we do to burn. We just swap masks depending on the projected ROI of the landing. How did we decide, the moment the prow touched the sand, whether we were going to empty the Abbey's vault or sign an exclusive distribution deal? The secret isn't in the strength of the arm, but in the cold calculation of the return on investment before the reinforcements arrive. If you want to understand the accounting logic that determined whether your village was looted or integrated into a protection franchise, join the council by subscribing. Signal your position. The longship is at anchor, and the market analysis begins now. You stand at the prow, hand resting on the salt-worn rail. The particular vibration of the hull comes up through oak that has crossed the North Sea 40 times. The coastline resolves from grey morning mist into readable detail. Monastery walls, smoke patterns, beached fishing boats that tell you whether the settlement knows you're coming. Behind you the crew waits in disciplined silence. These are men who have learned that information gathered in the first hour determines whether they eat well tonight or sleep in armor. The leather of your belt creaks as you shift weight. Seal oil and tar rise from the deck planking. You are already calculating approach angle, tide timing, the precise moment when you will know whether this morning brings formal negotiation or the faster work that monasteries without walls sometimes require. Sigurd's voice comes low from behind you. They sent a runner. You turn. A small figure moves along the beach path toward the monastery landing. Too early for tribute day, too deliberate for panic. They want to talk before we land, you say. Or they want time to hide the good silver. The monastery bell rings once. Not the call to prayer. Wrong hour for that. This is the bell they use for guests. Formal, almost polite. The runner reaches the beach and stops, arm raised. The gesture is clear even at this distance. Hold position. Negotiation incoming. Sigurd exhales through his teeth. Same abbot as last season? Same abbot. He paid on time. You watch the runner. He also saw what we did to the settlement that didn't. The ship's bell-like creak of the rigging settles into the morning quiet. Water slaps the hull in steady rhythm. The crew behind you has gone still, the kind of stillness that means they are listening but not staring, watching without watching. So we're trading, someone mutters from the benches. We're deciding, you say without turning. The monastery coastline assessment is a management problem you have spent 17 seasons learning to solve. The height of the walls tells you how much silver they can spare for defense instead of tribute. The smoke pattern indicates how many people live inside versus how many work the fields outside, which determines whether resistance is symbolic or tactical. The fishing boats on the beach, 6 of them, all beached high above the tide line, tell you they were warned early enough to secure their assets but not early enough to evacuate. Which means someone sent word after your sail was spotted but before you made landfall. That someone is either very efficient or very nervous. Thorvald moves up beside you. 11 years sailing together. Never lied to you outright, though he has occasionally withheld information until it became tactically relevant. The abbot's playing it smart, he says quietly. He's playing it the same way he did last year. Last year we honored the terms. We did. Thorvald is silent for 3 breaths. Then, the men are wondering if this year's terms are still open for negotiation. Translation. Some of the crew think the monastery looks softer than the tribute contract implies. and they are calculating whether breaching the agreement pays better than keeping it. You turn enough to see his face. The men can wonder quietly. The runner has stopped moving. He stands alone on the beach, a small figure against grey sand and greyer water, waiting for your ship to decide what kind of morning this will be. Bring us in slow, you tell the steersman. Sigurd, get Bjorn up here. Bjorn Halfblood appears from below decks before Sigurd finishes the order. The man has a sixth sense for when his particular skills are about to become relevant. Danish-born, English-raised, fluent in both languages, and the particular dialect of negotiation that happens on beaches between armed men and nervous clergy. They sent a runner, Bjorn observes. You're repeating information. I'm confirming you noticed. He leans on the rail beside you, studying the coastline with the calm focus of a man who has made a career out of standing between two groups who would prefer to kill each other but find paperwork more profitable. The abbot's been improving his defenses. I saw the timber. You see the patrol gap? I saw that too. Bjorn grins without warmth. Then you know he spent his silver on walls instead of hiring competent guards. Which means he's betting on the deterrent value of looking fortified rather than actually being fortified. That's a negotiating position, not a military one. The ship glides forward on momentum and current. The crew has shipped oars without being told. This approach requires silence and the appearance of calm assessment, not the aggressive speed of a combat landing. The runner still hasn't moved. What's the abbot's offer, you ask? We won't know until we beach, but if he sent a runner before we landed, he's either offering better terms than last year, or he's about to ask for a payment delay. Bjorn pauses. My money's on the second. You study the monastery walls. The fresh timber on the north side is well-joined, competent work, but the south corner shows weathering that wasn't there last season, which means they prioritized the visible defense over the structural gaps. Theatrical fortification. The kind that impresses farmers but not sailors. If he asks for delay, you say slowly, what's the crew's mood? Bjorn doesn't hesitate. Mixed. Half think your reputation for keeping contracts is worth more than one monastery's silver. The other half think a deal's only good if both sides honor it, and a payment delay is the same as a breach. And you? I think you didn't spend 17 years building a protection network from Orkney to the Seine, so you could trash it for one abbot's cash flow problem. He straightens. But I also think the men need to see you get something in return for the flexibility. Goodwill doesn't feed families in Vestfold. The keel scrapes shingle. The sound is soft, controlled. Not the aggressive crunch of a raid landing. The ship settles into the beach, with the patient solidity of a merchant vessel arriving on schedule. The runner approaches, young, maybe 16, Benedictine robes, clean hands. Not a fighter. He stops 10 feet from the prow and speaks in clear Norse. The abbot of Lindisfarne sends greetings to Jarl Sigurd Ironhand, and requests formal audience before tribute terms are discussed. Sigurd steps forward. The abbot knows the terms, we discussed them last season. The abbot respectfully requests renegotiation of the terms in light of, the boy hesitates, then commits, in light of circumstances that have changed since the previous agreement. You let the silence extend, the crew is listening. This is the moment when the morning's category gets decided. Trade, raid, or the grey space in between, where most of your work actually happens. What circumstances, you ask? The runner swallows. The abbot will explain in person. He offers hospitality and guarantees safe conduct for your delegation. Sigurd looks at you. The question is unspoken but clear. Do we trust the guarantee, or do we assume the hospitality comes with a garrison hidden behind the refectory? You step off the prow onto the wet shingle. The beach is empty except for the runner. No armed monks, no defensive positions. Just one nervous boy and the slow crash of surf on rock. Tell the abbot we accept his invitation, you say. 3 of us. Unarmed as courtesy requires. The runner nods and turns back up the beach path, at a pace just short of running. Bjorn appears at your shoulder, unarmed, as courtesy requires. You believe him. I believe the abbot is a rational man who understands that killing a delegation under safe conduct ends his protection contract and guarantees we burn the monastery to bedrock. You watch the runner disappear through the monastery gate. Whether he remains rational under financial pressure is the question we're about to answer. Thorvald has already started moving crew into beach positions, not an aggressive deployment, but enough presence that the monastery will see armed men between the ship and any theoretical ambush point. 17 seasons of practice, the formation assembles itself. You strip your weapons belt and hand it to one of the crew. Sigurd does the same. Bjorn never wore one. If this goes wrong, Sigurd says quietly, the men have orders to secure the ship and leave. It won't go wrong. But if it does, you meet his eyes. If it goes wrong, the men torch the monastery and sail home with a reputation for punishing broken hospitality. That reputation will cost us 3 seasons of tribute income across every settlement from here to Ireland. You turn toward the monastery path. So it won't go wrong. The 3 of you walk up the beach in silence, footsteps crunching on shingle, and somewhere behind you the ship creaks as the crew settles into waiting positions, and the morning is still grey, and the monastery bell has gone quiet, and you are 17 seasons into this work and you still do not know, walking up this particular beach, toward this particular negotiation, whether you will leave richer or poorer than you arrived. But you will leave. That much is certain. The gate is open when you reach it. The monastery's receiving hall smells like every other monastery you have negotiated in. Wet stone, beeswax, and the particular staleness of a room where men sleep on the floor after evening prayers. The abbot waits beside a table that holds no food, no drink, only a single ledger bound in cracked leather. No hospitality. This is pure business. Jarl Sigurd. The abbot's voice is steady. His hands are not. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Sigurd inclines his head with the exact degree of respect appropriate for a man who pays tribute but commands no fighting force. Professional courtesy, nothing more. You requested renegotiation, you say. We're listening. The abbot opens the ledger. The pages are covered in the dense script of monastic accounting. Entries in Latin. Numbers in the clear blocky style that means someone other than the abbot keeps the actual books. He runs one finger down a column, stops, taps twice. Last year's tribute was 50 pounds of silver, delivered on the feast of St. Cuthbert. He looks up. We paid on time. You did. This year's harvest has failed. He says it without drama, the way a man reports a collapsed roof or a dead ox. The rains came late. The grain yield is 40% of normal. Our stores will not carry us through winter if we pay the full tribute amount. Sigurd's expression doesn't change. You keep yours equally flat. Behind you, Bjorn is silent, which means he is calculating and will speak when the calculation is complete. You're asking for a reduction, you say. I'm asking for a payment structure that allows us to meet our obligations without starving our community. The distinction is deliberate. Not a reduction, an adjustment. Not a breach of contract, a refinement of terms. The abbot is better at this than you expected. What structure? Sigurd asks. The abbot turns the ledger around so you can see the numbers. 30 pounds now. The remaining 20 by spring planting, after we've sold our wool surplus in the York market. You study the ledger without touching it. The entries are meticulous. No evidence of creative accounting. The harvest numbers match the smoke patterns you observed from the ship. Fewer hearths burning, which means fewer mouths fed, which means the abbot is not exaggerating the shortfall. Show me the wool inventory, you say. The abbot blinks. Then he turns 3 pages and points to another column. You read in silence. The monastery runs 200 sheep on the coastal grazing lands. Current wool yield projects to approximately 60 pounds of raw fleece by spring. York market rates last season averaged £2 silver per £10 wool. Basic arithmetic gives you £12 of silver, not 20. Your wool won't cover the gap, you say. The abbot's jaw tightens. We will make up the difference through manuscript sales. Bjorn speaks for the first time. To whom? Frankish buyers. We have 3 illuminated gospel texts completed and 4 more in progress. What's your buyer network? I have contacts in Rouen, Paris. Bjorn's silence is loud. You know what it means. The abbot has contacts, not contracts. Contacts are men who might buy if the quality is adequate, and the price is favorable, and the political situation allows Frankish money to flow to English monasteries. Contacts are not reliable income. You turn to the abbot. You're betting £20 of silver on manuscript sales that depend on variables you don't control. I'm offering you a good faith payment plan backed by assets that will mature in 6 months. You're offering me a delay with speculative collateral. The abbot's hands flatten on the table. I'm offering you the only solution that keeps both our agreements intact. If you demand full payment now, we cannot meet the terms without stripping our grain stores to a level that guarantees deaths before spring. If deaths occur, the monastery's reputation collapses. If our reputation collapses, the quality of our manuscripts declines, because we lose our best scribes to starvation or departure. If manuscript quality declines, Frankish buyers go elsewhere. He leans forward slightly. Your protection contract is worth £50 annually, because we are a functioning monastery with valuable goods and stable tribute capacity. Dead monks produce neither silver nor manuscripts. I am asking you to accept a short-term payment adjustment to preserve the long-term value of the asset you are protecting. The silence that follows is the kind that happens when someone frames an argument so precisely that refuting it requires admitting you don't care about the logic, only the silver. Sigurd looks at you. This is the decision point. You can demand full payment and destroy the monastery's stability, which gives you £50 now and £0 next season. You can accept the payment plan and trust the abbot's assessment of wool and manuscript income, which gives you £30 now, and maybe £20 later. Or you can walk away from the negotiation entirely, torch the monastery as an example, and spend the next 3 years rebuilding a tribute network that will remember you as the Jarl who burned a compliant settlement over a failed harvest. The mathematics are simple, the politics are not. Brother Aidan, you say without turning, you're standing in the doorway, join the conversation. A slight rustling sound. A man in Benedictine robes steps into the hall. Older than the abbot, thinner, with ink stains on his right hand, and the permanent squint of someone who works by candlelight. You know my name, he says. Bjorn mentioned you last season. Irish-trained scribe. 3 completed Gospels in the scriptorium, 4 in progress. You're the one who actually knows what the Frankish buyers want. Brother Aidan's expression doesn't change. I know what they paid for last season. Will they pay the same this season? If the work is excellent. Is it excellent? A pause. Then, 2 of the completed texts are excellent. The 3rd is competent, but not exceptional. Of the 4 in progress, 1 will be exceptional if we finish it properly. The other 3 are speculative. The abbot's face tightens, but he doesn't interrupt. Brother Aidan has just confirmed what you already suspected. Half the manuscript collateral is solid, the other half is optimistic accounting. What do the 2 excellent texts sell for in Rouen, you ask? £18 of silver, combined. And the exceptional 1 in progress. £12, if finished. When will it be finished? 4 months. Assuming I have sufficient materials and no interruptions. You do the arithmetic. 18 from completed work, 12 from work in progress, assuming quality holds and buyers appear on schedule, £30 total, which covers the spring payment, with £10 margin for error. The abbot is betting the monastery's survival on Brother Aidan's assessment of his own work, and the stability of a buyer network in Francia. It is not a terrible bet, but it is still a bet. The wool is irrelevant, you say. You can't sell £60 of fleece for £20 of silver at York rates. But the manuscripts are real collateral if Brother Aidan's quality assessment is accurate. The abbot exhales slowly. Then you'll accept the payment structure. I'll accept a modified structure, you meet his eyes. £30 now as you proposed. But the spring payment is £15, not 20. And it's due when Brother Aidan's exceptional manuscript is completed and verified by an independent assessor. If the manuscript doesn't meet Frankish buyer standards, you pay the £15 regardless, in silver or equivalent goods at our assessment. If you default on the spring payment for any reason, the protection contract terminates, and we retain the right to recover the full original tribute amount, plus the cost of our disappointment. Bjorn makes a small sound that might be approval. The abbot is silent for a long moment. Then, who is the independent assessor? Brother Aidan's reputation. If he says the work meets standards, we accept his word. If he says it doesn't, you pay in silver. The abbot looks at Brother Aidan. The scribe nods once. The work will meet standards. Then we have terms, the abbot says quietly. Sigurd steps forward. We'll need the agreement witnessed and recorded. Brother Aidan will prepare the document now. The scribe moves to a side table, pulls parchment and ink from a leather case, and begins writing in the practiced silence of someone who has documented agreements on beaches and in monasteries, and in the backs of trading ships for longer than the abbot has held his position. You watch the words take shape. Latin, clear script, no ambiguity. The terms you just negotiated appear in formal language that will hold up under review by any jarl or bishop or king who questions the arrangement later. 15 minutes pass. The only sound is the scratch of Brother Aidan's pen and the distant rhythm of surf on rock. When the scribe finishes, he reads the document aloud in Latin, then again in Norse. Every clause matches the verbal agreement. No hidden terms. The abbot signs first. Sigurd signs second. You witness. Brother Aidan witnesses. 4 men standing in a monastery hall, finalizing a protection contract that will keep this settlement alive through winter and preserve your tribute network through spring, and none of you smile, because this is not a victory, it is simply the work. The silver is in the vault, the abbot says. I'll have it brought to the beach. We'll wait at the ship. The walk back down the monastery path is silent. The crew watches you approach. They read the outcome in your posture before you speak. Relaxed shoulders, steady pace, no weapons drawn. Trade, not raid. Thorvald meets you at the shingle line. Terms. Modified payment structure. 30 now, 15 in spring. Brother Aidan's manuscript work is collateral. And if the manuscripts don't sell, we have contract language that covers default. Thorvald nods slowly. The men will want to know why we didn't push for full payment. Tell them the full payment would have destroyed next year's tribute, and we're not in the business of killing assets that pay annually. Some of them think one monastery's silver isn't worth the flexibility. Some of them think wrong. You turn to face him directly. Our protection network runs on the reputation that we honor terms when settlements comply. This abbot paid on time last season. He's negotiating in good faith this season. If we burn him for a bad harvest, every other monastery from here to Dublin will assume cooperation is irrelevant and start spending their silver on mercenaries instead of tribute. That costs us more than £20 of deferred payment. Thorvald holds your gaze for 3 breaths. Then, I'll explain it to the men. Do that. The monastery runner appears on the beach path, followed by 2 monks carrying a wooden chest. The chest is small but heavy. You can see the effort in their movements. £30 of silver in coin and scrap. Sigurd receives the chest, opens it, and begins counting. The work takes 20 minutes. Precise, methodical, witnessed by crew members who will swear to the count if questions arise later. When Sigurd finishes, he nods. £30. Agreed weight. The abbot's messenger bows slightly. The abbot thanks you for your professionalism, and looks forward to fulfilling the spring terms. We'll return in 4 months to verify Brother Aidan's progress. You're welcome at any time. The messenger withdraws. The monks carry the empty chest back up the path. The beach empties except for your crew and the ship and the grey water. Sigurd secures the silver chest in the ship's hold. The crew begins preparing for departure. Routine movements, no urgency. A successful negotiation followed by a controlled exit. You stand at the prow again, watching the monastery walls. The abbot appears briefly on the north rampart, raises one hand in acknowledgement, then disappears. Professional courtesy, nothing more. The ship pushes off the shingle with the familiar scrape of keel on sand. The crew takes up oars. The rhythm starts slow and builds to cruising speed. The monastery shoreline recedes into grey mist. Thorvald moves up beside you. The men are asking what's in the scriptorium. Manuscripts. Brother Aidan's work. Is it worth £15? We'll find out in 4 months. He's quiet for a moment. Then, you trust the abbot? I trust Brother Aidan's professional vanity. He won't let substandard work leave his scriptorium with his name on it. And if the buyers don't appear, then we have contract language that lets us recover the loss without destroying the relationship. You glance at him. That's the difference between trading and raiding. Raiders take everything once. Traders take less repeatedly and build a system that pays more over time. Thorvald nods. Not everyone sees it that way. Not everyone has been doing this for 17 seasons. The ship settles into open water. The crew's breathing synchronizes with the oar rhythm. The morning is still grey, but the light is warmer now, and the smell of the coast is fading into the clean, salt emptiness of the North Sea. You will return in 4 months to see whether Brother Aidan's exceptional manuscript lives up to his assessment. You will return to collect the spring payment or renegotiate terms if circumstances change. You will return because that is what a protection contract means: presence, consistency, and the understanding that both parties benefit more from cooperation than conflict. The work is never finished, but the work is clear. And for now that's enough. The complaint starts on the second day at sea. Halfdan is the youngest crewman who actually has an opinion worth hearing. 23 years old, 5 seasons of service, the kind of sailor who rows hard and thinks harder, and occasionally asks questions that sound like challenges. He approaches while you're checking the spare rigging. Not subtle, not aggressive, just present. "We could have taken more," he says. You don't look up from the rope inspection. "More what?" "More silver. They had a vault. We had 40 armed men. The mathematics are simple." "The mathematics are never simple." You set down the rigging and face him. "What's your calculation?" He hesitates, then commits. "Full tribute is £50. We took 30. That's £20 of silver we left on the table, because the abbot said his harvest failed. And we didn't verify the harvest claim. We took his word. We took Brother Aidan's ledger, which showed grain yield at 40% of normal. We observed smoke patterns from the ship that matched the numbers. We counted fishing boats on the beach, which indicated reduced coastal activity consistent with food shortage. You keep your voice level. What didn't we verify? Halfdan's jaw tightens. The vault inventory. He could have had £80 in there and we'd never know. He could have. He probably doesn't. But you're right. We didn't verify. You step closer, not threatening, just closing the distance enough that he has to hold eye contact. Now tell me what happens if we break the receiving hall door, force the vault, and find exactly 30 pounds of silver inside. Then we know he wasn't lying. Then we know he wasn't lying, and we've also just destroyed the protection contract by violating safe conduct hospitality, which means every monastery in the network learns that Jarl Sigurd's safe conduct guarantee is worth nothing. You let that settle. Next season, when we approach a new settlement and offer tribute terms, what do? Halfdan doesn't answer immediately. They hire mercenaries, you say, because if our word means nothing, their only security is armed resistance, which means instead of collecting £50 annually through negotiation, we spend silver hiring additional crew to assault fortified positions. We lose men to defensive fire, and we maybe, take £70 once before the settlement evacuates or burns its own stores to deny us the prize. But we'd know, Halfdan says stubbornly, we'd know whether he lied. We'd know one abbot's vault inventory on one Tuesday in September. That information is worth exactly nothing, compared to the value of a reputation for keeping our word. The crew is listening now, not obviously. But you can feel the attention shift. This isn't a private conversation anymore. It's a policy explanation that half the men need to hear. You raise your voice slightly. Our protection network generates £400 of silver annually across 12 settlements. We maintain that network because those settlements believe we will honor our terms if they honor theirs. The moment we stop honoring terms, the network collapses and we're back to pure raiding. High risk, unpredictable returns, and a career expectancy that drops to about 6 seasons before someone's axe finds your neck on a beach you should have scouted better. Sigurd appears from the stern section. He's been listening. Halfdan, you have more to say? The young man hesitates, then decides to finish the thought. I'm saying there's a difference between honoring terms and letting people renegotiate whenever it's convenient. There is. Sigurd agrees. The difference is whether the renegotiation happens in good faith. The abbot paid on time last year. He's offering documented collateral this year. He's not defaulting. He's restructuring based on circumstances we verified independently. That's not convenience. That's adaptation. And if next year he comes back with another failed harvest, then we look at the pattern. 1 bad year is weather. 2 bad years is either catastrophic luck or poor management. 3 bad years is a failing asset that we stop protecting. Sigurd's expression doesn't change. But we don't make that judgment on year 1. We honor the terms, collect the modified payment, and see whether Brother Aiden's manuscripts cover the spring gap. Halfdan nods slowly. And if they don't, then we have contract language that lets us recover the loss, and we downgrade the monastery's tribute assessment for the following year. Sigurd pauses. Or we terminate the contract entirely, and move our protection focus to settlements with better fundamentals. What we don't do is burn a compliant monastery because one harvest failed. The young man is quiet for a long moment. Then, understood. He returns to his rowing position. The crew settles back into routine. The challenge is over, resolved without violence, and the policy explanation is now common knowledge. Thorvald moves up beside you, voice low. He's not wrong about verification. He's not wrong, he's inexperienced. There's a difference. Some of the older men agree with him. You glance at the crew. How many? 4, maybe 5. They think you're getting soft. They think I'm getting soft, or they think the risk assessment was wrong. Thorvald considers. The second. They think the abbot played you. Then, in 4 months, when we return for the spring payment, they'll see whether the abbot's manuscript collateral was real or theatre. You turn back to the rigging inspection. If Brother Aiden delivers and the payment clears, the complaint dies. If the abbot defaults, I'll acknowledge the error, and will adjust future assessments. Until then, the terms stand. And if the crew doesn't want to wait 4 months for verification, you set down the rope and face him directly. Then the crew doesn't understand how protection networks function, and I'll explain it as many times as necessary until they do. We are not raiders. We are operators of a long-term commercial system that depends on reputation and contract enforcement. If they want to go back to pure raiding, they can find another ship. You pause. Are we clear? Thorvald nods. Clear. He returns to the stern. You finish the rigging inspection in silence. The ship moves through grey water under grey sky. The rhythm of oars steady and unchanging. This is the work, not the beach negotiations or the silver counting, but the constant low-level management of crew expectations. The endless explanations of why patience pays more than aggression. The slow construction of a reputation that allows you to approach settlements without fighting because they already know that compliance is cheaper than resistance. 17 seasons of this. 17 seasons of explaining the same logic to new crew members who think violence is simpler than negotiation. 17 seasons of proving that the patient extraction of tribute from living settlements generates more silver than the one-time looting of burning ones. And you will do it for 17 more seasons if necessary, because the alternative is a return to the short, brutal career of a pure raider, and you stopped finding that appealing somewhere around season 4, when you watched a crew of 20 men take a monastery's entire vault and then get caught by the local lord's garrison on the way back to their ship. 12 of those 20 men died on that beach. The other 8 made it to the ship but lost the silver in the retreat. Net result: 0 silver, 12 dead, and a regional reputation that made every subsequent landing a fight. You prefer the negotiation model. The ship sails north through the afternoon. The coast of Northumbria fades into the southern haze. Ahead lies open water, then Vestfold, then the distribution of silver to crew families and the long accounting session where you reconcile this season's returns against operating costs and plan next season's route. But that is still days away. For now there is only the ship, the water, the steady rhythm of oars, and the knowledge that you made the right call on the beach even if half the crew doesn't understand why yet. They will understand in 4 months. Or they won't, and you'll have a different problem to solve. Either way, the work continues. Either way, the work continues. Halfdan is the youngest crewman who actually has an opinion worth hearing. 23 years old, 5 seasons of service, the kind of sailor who rows hard and thinks harder, and occasionally asks questions that sound like complaints until you realize they're better risk assessments than anything you came up with on your own. He's standing at the shingle line where the longship's keel rests, checking the seal grease on the hull planking. The tide is rising. You have 3 hours before the water reaches the ship, which means 3 hours to finish the negotiation, or 3 hours to decide you're not finishing it at all. The runner, Halfdan says, not looking up from the hull. He stopped at the gate, didn't go inside. You saw that too. The monastery gate opened. The runner stood in the threshold. Then he turned, and walked the perimeter of the north wall instead of entering. A man delivering a message usually delivers it. A man who stops at the door usually has a reason. He's marking something, you say. Halfdan nods, runs his palm along the planking, feeling for gaps. Fresh timber on the wall, new gate posts. The hinges are iron, good iron, not scrap. Someone paid for that. The monastery has been improving its defenses. Not dramatically, not with stone and siege towers. Just the kind of incremental upgrades that say, we know you're coming back, and we're getting better at this. It's almost respectful. Brother Aidan is the monk handling the negotiation on their side. You met him 2 seasons ago, when the abbot sent him to the beach with a counteroffer written on vellum in 3 languages, Old Norse, Latin, and Irish, just to make sure nobody could claim they didn't understand the terms. He's a small, precise man, who moves like someone who learned early that taking up space is dangerous. Irish trained. literate in more scripts than you can name, and the only person in this monastery who knows which manuscripts in their scriptorium have buyers in the Frankish markets, which makes him, improbably, the most useful person in the building. He's walking toward the beach now, alone, carrying a leather satchel that probably holds the tribute inventory. No armed escort, no abbot, just a scholar doing paperwork on a September morning. You meet him halfway. "The runner," you say, no preamble. Brother Aidan stops, adjusts the satchel strap on his shoulder. The runner delivered his message. He stopped at the gate, didn't go inside. He delivered it to the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper brought it to the abbot. The abbot read it. Standard procedure. Standard procedure is walking inside. Brother Aidan's expression doesn't change. The gatekeeper is new. He's still learning the protocols. That's a lie, not a big one. Just enough to signal that whatever the runner was marking, it's not something Brother Aidan is authorized to discuss on a beach with 17 armed Norsemen watching from the shingle. You let it sit for a moment. The surf fills the silence. Halfdan is still checking the hull, close enough to hear, far enough to pretend he isn't listening. "The tribute, you say?" Brother Aidan opens the satchel, pulls out a folded sheet of vellum, hands it to you. "Same terms as last season. 40 pounds of grain. 10 pounds of dried fish. 12 silver pennies. 1 illuminated psalter, not the one you asked for, but one of comparable value that we're willing to part with." You scan the list. The grain and fish are standard. The silver is slightly less than last season but close enough. The psalter is the negotiation point. Last season you asked for a specific manuscript, one with Frankish buyers, and they offered a different one. This season they're doing it again. "The psalter you're offering," you say. "Which scriptorium?" "Ours. Copied 18 months ago. Good condition. Decent illumination work on the opening folios." "Market value?" Brother Aidan's pause is almost imperceptible. "In the right market, 12 to 15 silver marks." Which means they know exactly where to sell it, and they're keeping the high-value manuscripts for themselves. The whole tributary economy is the 9th century equivalent of a subscription service, where both sides pretend the relationship is voluntary, and nobody mentions the part where cancelling your subscription gets your village burned to the foundation stones. You pay on time, you get protection. You underpay, you get a strongly worded follow-up visit. You stop paying entirely, you get rebranded as a legitimate military target. The margins are thin, the incentives are clear, the paperwork is surprisingly professional. "The psalter is acceptable," you say. Brother Aidan nods. Folds the vellum. "The grain and fish will be ready by midday, the silver and the manuscript this evening." "Agreed." He turns to leave. Stops. The runner you saw, he wasn't marking anything, he was simply following new security protocols the abbot implemented after the last incident. What incident? A crew from Dublin, 3 ships, they claimed they were here to trade, they weren't. You don't ask what happened to the Dublin crew. The fresh timber on the north wall is answer enough. Brother Aidan walks back toward the monastery. You watch him go. Halfway up the slope, he glances back once. Not at you, but at the longship, where Thorvald is standing at the stern, looking at the monastery with an expression you can't read from this distance. Halfdan finishes his hull inspection, straightens. The seal grease is holding. We're good for the return voyage. Good. The runner wasn't just following protocols. No. You think they're hiding something in the scriptorium. I think they're hiding something valuable enough to improve their defenses and change their security procedures. Whether it's in the scriptorium or somewhere else, that's the question. Halfdan looks at the monastery, at the new gate, at the fresh timber. Are we asking? You consider it. The tide is rising. The tribute terms are acceptable. The manuscript they're offering is worth taking, even if it isn't worth what you originally asked for. The professional move is to take the deal, load the ship, and sail home with a successful season and no casualties. The other move is to ask what's in the scriptorium. You don't answer yet. The surf runs up the shingle, the longship's planking creaks as the water reaches the keel, half done waits. Not yet, you say. The tribute arrives at midday, exactly as Brother Aidan promised. 40 pounds of grain in sealed leather sacks, 10 pounds of dried fish wrapped in oiled cloth, 12 silver pennies in a wooden box, with the monastery's mark burned into the lid. The psalter comes last, carried by Brother Aidan himself, wrapped in linen and tied with cord that's been sealed with wax. You inspect the grain first, good quality, no mold, no weevils. The kind of stock you keep for winter, not the kind you dump on a beach to get rid of a problem. The fish is clean, properly dried. The silver is standard weight, no clipping. The psalter is the item that requires actual assessment. You unwrap it on the beach, the vellum is clean. The script is legible. The illumination work on the opening folios is competent. Geometric borders, some gilt work, a small portrait of a saint, whose name you don't recognize, but whose halo is rendered in good gold leaf. It's not a masterpiece, it's also not trash. Acceptable, you say. Brother Aidan nods, doesn't smile, doesn't look relieved. Just acknowledges the verdict and steps back. Sigurd, Jarl Sigurd Ironhand, the man who has been running this operation since before you learned to read a coastline, walks down from the ship to inspect the tribute himself. He's a broad man, grey-bearded, with the kind of face that's been broken and reset enough times that it no longer registers surprise. 17 years of this work. 3 territories. A reputation that extends from the Orkney Islands to the Seine Valley, and the most valuable commercial asset he owns is the fact that when he signs a tributary agreement, he honors it. Which means the monks know that if they pay what they agreed to pay, they won't wake up to fire. And if they don't, they will. He picks up one of the grain sacks, tests the weight, opens the seal, runs a hand through the grain and brings a few kernels to his mouth, chews, swallows, nods. Good stock, he says, better than last season. We had a better harvest, Brother Aidan says. Sigurd moves to the fish, unwraps one bundle. Smells it, breaks off a piece and chews it without expression. Clean work, no salt burn. We improved the drying process. Sigurd picks up the psalter, holds it to the light, turns a few pages. His Old Norse is fluent, his Latin is functional. His ability to assess whether a manuscript will sell in a Frankish market is better than most of the monks who copied it. He reads the opening folio, closes the book, hands it back to Brother Aidan. Not the one I asked for, he says. No, but worth 12 to 15 marks in the right market. Brother Aidan's expression doesn't change. In the right market, yes. And you know where that market is? I do. Sigurd nods slowly. Looks at the monastery, at the new gate, at the fresh timber on the north wall. You've been busy since last season. We've made improvements. I noticed. New gatekeeper too. Yes. He's learning the protocols. Brother Aidan's pause is just long enough to be noticeable. He is. Sigurd lets it sit. The wind picks up off the water, the longship's rigging creaks. Halfdan and 2 other crewmen are loading the grain sacks into the hold, working in the efficient silence of men who have done this enough times that they don't need to discuss it. The Dublin crew, Sigurd says, the ones who claimed they were here to trade. They weren't. What happened? They attempted to force entry through the South Postern. The attempt failed. They left the same day. How many ships? 3. How many men? Approximately 60. Sigurd's expression doesn't change, but you see the calculation. 60 men is a real crew. 3 ships is a real fleet. An attempt to force entry that fails means the monastery had enough armed men inside to make forcing entry a bad idea. Which means the monks are better defended than they look. You drove them off, Sigurd says. We persuaded them that the terms of trade were non-negotiable. With what? Brother Aiden's face remains neutral. With clarity. It's the kind of answer that sounds like nothing and means everything. Sigurd knows it, you know it. Brother Aiden knows, you both know it. The post-raid debrief that takes longer than the raid is the 9th century equivalent of a performance review where both sides are armed and nobody's using their real job title. You discuss terms, you verify compliance, you assess whether the other party is still operating in good faith, or whether they've quietly moved into the planning to betray you at the first opportunity category. The Dublin crew got clarity. The clarity was probably delivered at spear point, and now the monastery has fresh timber on the north wall, and a new gatekeeper who follows protocols that didn't exist last season. Sigurd picks up the wooden box with the silver, opens it, counts the coins, 12, standard weight, closes the box. The terms are satisfied, he says. Agreed. We'll be gone by evening tide. Brother Aiden nods, turns to leave, stops. Jarl Sigurd. Yes. If you return next season, and I assume you will, please send word 3 days in advance. The new protocols require advance notice for tributary visits. Sigurd's expression doesn't change. Noted. Brother Aiden walks back up the slope toward the monastery. Sigurd watches him go. Then he turns to you. Load the tribute, he says. We sail at evening tide. Understood. And find out what Thorvald is looking at. You follow his gaze. Thorvald is still standing at the stern of the longship, staring at the monastery gate. He hasn't moved since the tribute arrived. Hasn't helped with the loading. Just stood there, watching. I'll ask, you say. Sigurd nods, picks up the psalter, walks back to the ship. You cross the shingle to where Thorvald is standing. He doesn't look at you. The tribute's loaded, you say. I saw. We sail at evening tide. I know. You wait, the wind shifts. The monastery bell rings, not the usual schedule. Midday prayers finished an hour ago. This is something else. Thorvald hears it. His jaw tightens. You've been here before, you say. He doesn't answer immediately. Then, 3 seasons ago. You never mentioned it. It wasn't relevant. Is it relevant now? Thorvald finally looks at you. His face is the kind of tired that doesn't come from rowing. I made a promise to the abbot, I didn't keep it. You wait. I told him I'd return something I took. I didn't. What did you take? Something that wasn't part of the tribute agreement. The bell rings again. Thorvald's hand tightens on the ship's rail. And now they know you're back, you say. Yes. The evening tide is 2 hours out when the monastery bell rings for the 3rd time. You're checking the last of the cargo lashings when Halfdan calls from the bow. Movement. North Gate. You look up. The gate is open. Brother Aiden is walking toward the beach again, but this time he's not alone. 2 monks follow him. Younger men, unarmed, but moving with the deliberate formality of people delivering a message they've been instructed to deliver word for word. Sigurd sees them too. He's standing at the stern, hands resting on the rail, watching their approach, with the expression of a man who has been in enough negotiations to know when one is about to get complicated. Trouble? Halfdan asks. Information, you say. We'll know which in a minute. Brother Aiden reaches the shingle. The 2 monks stop 10 paces behind him. He's carrying the same leather satchel, but this time it looks heavier. Jarl Sigurd, he says, a word before you sail. Sigurd steps down from the ship. You follow. Thorvald stays where he is, but you can feel him listening. We're on schedule, Sigurd says. The tribute is loaded. The terms are satisfied. They are. Brother Aidan agrees. This is a separate matter. He opens the satchel. Pulls out a small wooden box, older than the one that held the silver. The wood is dark. The corners are reinforced with bronze. The lid is carved with a cross and a line of Latin text you can't read from this distance. 3 seasons ago, Brother Aidan says, a member of your crew took something from our scriptorium. It wasn't part of the agreed tribute. It was taken without negotiation. Sigurd's expression doesn't change. What was taken? A reliquary, small, carved boxwood, containing a fragment of St. Cuthbert's vestment. You glance at Thorvald. He's not looking at any of you, just staring at the waterline. The man who took it, Brother Aidan continues, made a promise to the abbot. He said he would return it within 2 seasons. He did not. And now you want it back, Sigurd says. We do, but we're not asking for it as a gift. Brother Aidan sets the box on the shingle, opens it. Inside is a small leather purse, 30 silver pennies, market value for a reliquary of that age and provenance. Sigurd looks at the purse, at Brother Aidan, at the 2 monks standing in formal witness position. You're buying it back, he says. We are offering to purchase it back, yes, if it is returned. The whole arrangement is the 9th century version of a formal dispute resolution process that requires witnesses from both sides and creates a written record of an informal arrangement that both parties will pretend never to reference again, while simultaneously treating it as legally binding. The monks can't accuse Thorvald of theft without breaking the tributary relationship. Thorvald can't keep the reliquary without admitting he violated the terms. So instead, the monastery offers to buy back what was taken, the payment gets witnessed, and everyone walks away with the relationship intact, and the paperwork in order. It's elegant, it's professional, it's the kind of solution that only works if both sides care more about the long-term relationship than the short-term win. Sigurd turns to you. Get Thorvald. You walk back to the ship. Thorvald is still at the rail. They want the reliquary. I know. They're paying 30 silver pennies for it. I heard. Do you still have it? Thorvald reaches into his belt pouch, pulls out a small object wrapped in wool, hands it to you without looking at it. You unwrap it. The reliquary is small, fits in your palm. Carved boxwood, darkened with age. The craftsmanship is fine. The kind of object that took someone weeks to carve and decades to acquire the authority to own. You carry it back to the beach, hand it to Brother Aidan. He unwraps it, examines it, nods. Undamaged. It was kept carefully, you say. Brother Aidan opens the leather purse, counts out 30 silver pennies onto the lid of the box. The 2 witness monks step forward. One of them produces a wax tablet and stylus, begins writing. The transaction, Brother Aidan says, is witnessed and recorded. The reliquary is returned. The payment is made. The matter is resolved. Sigurd picks up the coins, counts them. 30. Standard weight. He hands them to you. Accepted. Brother Aidan wraps the reliquary, places it back in the carved box, closes the lid. The witness monk finishes writing, shows the tablet to Brother Aidan, who nods. Then to Sigurd, who reads it and nods as well. The record will be kept in our archive, Brother Aidan says. A copy will be provided if requested. Understood. The 2 witness monks step back. Brother Aidan picks up the box. Jarl Sigurd, safe voyage. Brother Aidan. They walk back toward the monastery. The gate closes behind them. The bell rings once. The sunset hour, right on schedule this time. Sigurd turns to you. Load the silver. We sail in 1 hour. You climb back onto the ship. Thorvald is still at the rail. You hand him the 30 silver pennies. Your debt is paid, you say. He takes the coins, looks at them. It was never about the debt. What was it about? I wanted to see if I could take something that mattered and walk away clean. He closes his hand around the silver. Turns out you can't. The tide is rising. The longship shifts slightly as the water lifts the keel. Halfdan calls from the bow, cargo secured, rigging checked, ready to sail. Sigurd gives the order, the crew moves into position, oars out, lines cast off. The monastery bell rings again, not on schedule this time, warning or signal, you can't tell. But Brother Aidan is standing at the north gate, watching the ship pull away from the beach. You don't wave, neither does he. The longship catches the tide. The oars bite, the coast recedes. Thorvald finally moves from the rail, walks to his navigation position, checks the sun angle, sets the course for home. The bell fades behind you. The open water ahead is grey and flat, and familiar. The monastery's north wall still has fresh timber showing where they repaired last winter's storm damage. You notice it from 300 yards out because you have been looking at monastery walls for 17 years and you know what repairs mean. They spent money. Money spent on walls is money not available for tribute. Money not available for tribute means someone made a calculation about which risk to prioritize. You stand at the rail where the deck meets the water. The morning is grey and windless. The ship moves on oar rhythm alone. Thorvald is beside you, not speaking. He has been not speaking since yesterday evening, when Sigurd asked him about the route south, and he answered in half the words he usually uses. You know that silence. It means he is holding something back. You do not know what yet. The beach ahead is empty except for one figure. Just one. That is the second thing you notice. Last season there were 3 men waiting when you anchored. Oswin, the headman, the monk, and a boy who carried messages. This season, 1 man, standing where the shingle meets the grass. They know we are here, Thorvald says. They have known since dawn. You watch the figure. Too far to identify yet. The question is what they have decided to do about it. The wall repairs glow pale against the darker stone. New oak. Expensive. You calculate silently. Timber that good costs silver, and silver spent on defense is silver they believe they will need to defend. The payment structure is shifting. You can feel it the way you feel weather changing before the wind arrives. Halfdan is at the oars, third bench, starboard side. He rows in the rhythm the ship demands, and watches the shore with the expression of a man learning a lesson he did not ask for. 5 seasons at sea, and he still thinks negotiations resolve cleanly. You were the same at his age. Then you learned that every agreement is provisional and every promise is a bet against next season's circumstances. The monastery bell rings once. Not the call to prayer. The signal. They are ready, you say. Sigurd appears beside you without sound. He has that ability, to move through a crowded ship, and arrive exactly where he is needed, as though he were simply always there. He looks at the wall, the beach, the single figure waiting. 1 man, he says. Yes. Confident or desperate? We will know when we are close enough to see his hands. The ship moves forward. The oars creak in their locks. The sound is familiar enough that you do not hear it unless you choose to. You choose to now. The rhythm is steady. The crew is calm. No one is rushing. That is good. Rushing into a negotiation is how you end up paying more than the other side was willing to accept. The figure resolves into Brother Aidan as you approach, not Oswin. That is the third thing you notice. The monk, not the headman. A scholar sent to meet armed men. That is either a gesture of respect, or a miscalculation so profound you will spend the next hour determining which. The keel scrapes shingle. You step into ankle-deep water without hesitation. The cold goes through your boots immediately. September water on the Northumbrian coast does not care about your comfort. You wade toward the beach. Brother Aidan stands 5 paces from the waterline. His hands are empty and visible. That answers Sigurd's question. Confident, not desperate. A desperate man hides his hands, or keeps them on a weapon he does not know how to use. You made good time, Aidan says. His voice is even, no fear in it. No warmth either. The wind was with us. You stopped 3 paces away, close enough to speak without shouting, far enough to move if needed. Oswin is well? He is occupied. Aidan's eyes flicked toward the monastery, then back. He asked me to begin the conversation. You nod. The conversation has already begun. Oswin occupied means Oswin is managing something that takes precedence over meeting the ship that has collected tribute from this settlement for 3 consecutive seasons. That something is either an internal crisis or an external opportunity. Either way it shifts the terms. Behind you, the crew is securing the ship. You hear the anchor stone hit water. The sound is clean and final. We can wait, you say. That will not be necessary. Aidan gestures toward the monastery. He will join us shortly. In the meantime, there is a matter that requires immediate attention. You wait. Immediate attention means urgency. Urgency means someone else is involved. Someone else involved means competition or threat, or both. There is a second ship, Aidan says, 3 days north. They stopped at Lindisfarne. They are moving south. And there it is. The thing that changed the wall, the waiting man, the calculation Oswin is making while you stand on this beach listening to a monk deliver intelligence he has no obligation to provide. You do not react. Thorvald behind you does not react. Sigurd, still aboard, does not react. The crew continues their work as though they have heard nothing. How many men, you ask? Reports vary, between 40 and 70. Did they trade or raid? They negotiated. Aidan pauses. Poorly. You process that. Negotiated poorly means they asked for more than the settlement could provide, or threatened more than they could deliver. Either way, they are hungry or inexperienced or both. Hungry men make mistakes. Inexperienced men make different mistakes. Men who are both make the kind of mistakes that turn a coastline into a problem that requires multiple ships to resolve. The water moves against your boots. The cold has stopped registering. You are already thinking 3 days ahead. The Great Hall smells like last night's fish, and this morning's bread. The fire is already lit even though the sun is barely up. That tells you Oswin has been awake for hours. Which tells you he has been making decisions without waiting to see what you would propose. He sits at the head table, with his hands flat on the wood, not gripping, not fidgeting, just there. A man displaying calm he may or may not feel. You enter alone. Thorvald and Sigurd remain outside with the crew. This is not a negotiation that benefits from visible strength. Oswin already knows how many men you brought. What he needs to know is whether you intend to use them. The wall looks good, you say. Oswin nods once. It cost more than we planned. You sit across from him without asking permission. The bench is worn smooth in the center where countless men have sat for countless negotiations. You add yourself to that history. The timber came from where? York, overland. He pauses. The coast route was not safe this summer. You file that information next to everything else you are learning this morning. The coast route runs past Lindisfarne. If it was not safe, that second ship is not the first problem Oswin has managed this season. A woman brings bread and sets it between you without speaking. She is young, maybe 20, and she moves like someone who has learned to be invisible in rooms where men are calculating violence. You do not touch the bread yet. Neither does Oswin. Aidan mentioned a ship, you say. 3 days north when the fishermen saw them. Could be 2 days now if they are moving fast. Oswin's voice is level. They took 30 pounds of silver from Lindisfarne, and left the abbot alive to complain about it. 30 pounds is ambitious. 30 pounds is stupid. Lindisfarne does not have 30 pounds to lose in September. They will spend the winter short, and next spring they will remember who made them short. You nod. The strategy is sound. Take enough to matter but not enough to destroy. A destroyed settlement pays nothing next season. A resentful settlement pays reluctantly but pays. You think they are coming here next, you say. I think they are hungry and moving south, and we are south. Oswin picks up the bread, tears it in half, offers you a piece. You take it. The gesture is older than either of you. Shared food is shared trust, even when the trust is provisional. The bread is yesterday's loaf, dense and dark. Barley, not wheat. You chew slowly. What do you need from me, you ask? Oswin sets his half of the bread down uneaten. I need you to be here when they arrive. You consider that. Being here when another ship arrives means choosing a side. Choosing a side means the arrangement stops being simple. Simple arrangements last. Complicated arrangements collapse under their own weight. And if I am here, you say, you pay what? Half what we agreed. The other half when they leave without taking anything. You do the arithmetic in your head. Half now is £12. The other half conditional on an outcome you cannot fully control. If the second ship decides to fight instead of negotiate, you will earn your £12 in blood, and blood is expensive in ways silver is not. But if you leave now, Oswin pays nothing. The second ship takes whatever they want. Next season this settlement is poorer, or burned. And either way you have one fewer reliable stop on a coast that is becoming less reliable every year. Show me what you have now, you say. Oswin rises and crosses to a chest against the wall. He opens it without ceremony and removes a leather bag. He sets it on the table between you. The sound it makes is the sound of silver that has already been counted. You loosen the drawstring and look inside without touching the contents. Coins, not hack silver, mixed origin, some Frankish, some English, two that look Byzantine. All of it real, none of it shaved or clipped. £12, 2 ounces, Oswin says, counted this morning. You close the bag. And the other 12 when the second ship leaves? When they leave, without taking more than £20 total from this village. If they take more, I cannot pay you the rest. I will not have it. The condition is fair. You nod. We stay until the matter is resolved, you say. If they negotiate, we observe. If they demand more than you can pay, we explain why that is unwise. If they insist, we make the explanation clearer. Oswin exhales. Not relief, just the sound of a man who has secured one piece of a solution and can now move to the next piece. They will arrive tomorrow, he says. Maybe the day after. Then, we will be ready tomorrow. You stand. Oswin remains seated. The negotiation is complete, but the moment is not. There is something else he needs to say and has not yet said. They are young, Oswin finally says. The crew on that second ship, the fishermen said they are loud and certain and young. You understand. Young and certain means they have not yet learned the cost of being wrong. They will take risks that older crews avoid. They will push negotiations past the point of safety because they do not yet know where that point is. We will teach them, you say. Oswin nods. You take the leather bag and walk toward the door. The fire crackles behind you. Somewhere outside a gull is crying over the beach. The arrangement holds. For now. The ship appears mid-morning on the second day. You see the sail first, red and white striped, visible against the grey water long before the hull resolves into detail. Thorvald spots it at the same moment you do. He does not point. He simply turns his head slightly and you know he has seen it too. 40 men, he says quietly. Maybe 50. You count the oar ports as the ship draws closer. 30 benches. 60 possible rowers if they are full crewed, but the sail is up and the oars are shipped, which means they are not expecting trouble. That is their first mistake. Sigurd joins you at the rail. He has been sharpening his axe for the past hour, not because it needs sharpening, but because men who are waiting need something to do with their hands. The whetstone sound has stopped now. He watches the approaching ship with the expression of a man evaluating a problem he knows how to solve. They are heading straight for the beach, Sigurd says. Yes. Not cautious. No. The red and white sail catches the wind and the ship surges forward. You can see figures on deck now, too many of them standing, not enough seated and ready. A crew that has not yet learned the difference between arriving and arriving safely. Your own crew is already in position. Halfdan and 5 others are on the beach in clear view, working on a net that does not need repair. The rest are aboard your ship, or inside the hall with Oswin, invisible until needed. The appearance is casual. The reality is prepared. The second ship's keel hits shingle hard enough that you hear it from 100 yards away. The sound is wrong. Too much speed, too little control. Men leap into the water before the ship is fully stopped. They are shouting to each other in Norse, and the words carry across the beach. Excited, confident, young. Oswin was right. A tall man in a dark cloak steps off the ship last. He does not shout, he does not rush. He walks through the shallow water as though he is expected and welcome, and you recognize the performance. He is the leader, and he is showing his crew that leaders do not hurry. You remain at your rail and wait. Let them come to you. Let them see that you were here first and are unbothered by their arrival. The tall man, his name will be something like Bjorn or Eric or Gunnar. They are always named something like that. Reaches dry shingle and stops. He looks at Halfdan and the net menders. He looks at your ship, anchored and secure. He looks at the monastery on the hill. Then he looks directly at you. You meet his eyes across the distance and do not move. He says something to the man beside him. The man laughs. It is the kind of laugh that is meant to be heard. A performance of ease. You have heard it 1,000 times. It always means the same thing. Uncertainty disguised as confidence. Halfdan straightens from the net and walks toward them. His hands are empty and relaxed. He stops 10 feet away and waits. The tall man speaks first. You cannot hear the words, but you see Halfdan's response. A slight tilt of his head toward your ship, then toward the monastery, then back to the tall man. The message is clear. Others are involved, and you should know that before you continue. The tall man's posture shifts. Not much, just enough. He has registered that this is not an empty beach waiting to be claimed. Halfdan gestures toward the hall. An invitation. The tall man considers, then nods. He selects 3 men from his crew and starts walking. The rest remain by their ship, and you can see the discipline starting to crack. Some sitting, some standing, some already scanning the monastery like men calculating next steps without orders. You descend from your ship and walk toward the hall without hurrying. Thorvald and Sigurd fall in beside you. By the time you reach the door, the tall man and his 3 companions are already inside with Oswin. You enter. The tall man is standing near the fire, not sitting. His cloak is pinned with a silver brooch worked in a pattern you recognize. Dublin smithwork. Expensive. Probably taken rather than bought. He is younger than you expected. Mid-20s. Old enough to command, but not old enough to have lost a negotiation that mattered. I am Ragnvald Egilson, he says when you enter. His voice is steady. We are resupplying before continuing south. Resupplying, you repeat. Food, water and silver, for what the food and water are worth. He says it like a formula he has practiced. Oswin is seated at the table, his hands flat on the wood again. He does not look at you. He is leaving this moment for you to manage. You walk to the table and sit across from Oswin, which places Ragnvald off to your side. A small thing, but it shifts the geometry of the room. Now he is adjacent to the conversation, not central to it. This village has an arrangement already, you say. The terms are settled. Ragnvald's jaw tightens. We are not asking about arrangements, we are offering trade. Trade, you say. At what price? Fair price. Fair is a word that means different things to different people. Give me a number. Ragnvald hesitates. The hesitation tells you everything. He does not have a number, he has a concept. Concepts do not work when the other side asks for specifics. 20 pounds of silver, he finally says, for food and water sufficient for 60 men for 3 days. You do not react to the number. 20 pounds for 3 days of supplies is 4 times what those supplies cost. It is not trade, it is tribute with a polite name. Oswin, you say, still looking at Ragnvald, do you have 20 pounds of silver available after the wall repair and the York timber? No, Oswin says quietly. Do you have 10? No. You nod. The arithmetic is now visible to everyone in the room. Ragnvald is demanding silver that does not exist, which means he will either leave empty or take something by force. I can offer 6 pounds, Oswin says. And the food and water at cost. Ragnvald shakes his head. We need 20. Need and have are different things, you say. He has 6. You can take 6 and leave with no trouble, or you can try for 20 and leave with something other than silver. The room is very quiet. One of Ragnvald's men shifts his weight. You hear the leather creak. Ragnvald looks at you fully now. He is doing the same arithmetic you did 2 days ago, weighing the cost of fighting against the cost of accepting less than he wanted. Who are you, he asks. Someone who was here first, you say. The arrangement predates your arrival. If you want to renegotiate the entire coast, that is a longer conversation. If you want to resupply and continue south, 6 pounds and provisions will accomplish that. Ragnvald is silent for a long moment. Then he nods once, sharp and final. 6 pounds, he says, and provisions for 3 days. Agreed. The negotiation is over. Ragnvald and his men leave the hall without ceremony. You remain seated across from Oswin. Outside you hear the sounds of his crew receiving new orders. Disappointed sounds, argument sounds. Then silence as discipline reasserts itself. Oswin exhales slowly. They will leave by evening, you say. And next season? Next season, they will remember that 6 pounds was easier than 20 pounds would have been. Oswin nods. He retrieves another leather bag from the chest, the second half of your payment. He sets it on the table beside the first. The arrangement holds. The monastery's guest hall is smaller than the receiving room. Stone walls, no windows, a single brazier that gives off more smell than heat. Brother Aidan gestures to a bench. Please, he says, the abbot will join us shortly. You sit. Thorvald remains standing near the door, which is the kind of choice that means something but you're not sure what yet. The monk returns with bread, cheese and ale in wooden cups. This is hospitality, formal and deliberate. In 17 seasons you've learned that what a monastery serves tells you what they think the meeting is worth. Bread means compliance. Ale means negotiation. Both together means they want something. The tribute you've brought is acceptable, Brother Aidan says, settling onto the opposite bench. The abbot wishes to discuss next season's arrangement. Next season's already agreed, you say. Circumstances change. The door opens. The abbot enters. Older than you expected, moving carefully. The kind of man whose authority comes from outlasting younger challengers. He nods to you, glances at Thorvald, then sits beside Brother Aidan without ceremony. You honor your agreements, the abbot says. Not a question. A statement that requires confirmation. We do. Then we have common ground. He folds his hands. 3 ships visited the settlement at Whitby last month. They were not traders. You wait. They took the summer's wool stores, killed 2 men who objected, left before the tide turned. The abbot's voice stays level. One of those ships carried a red sail with a white cross. I am told this is a Vestfold marking. It is. But it's also a marking half the Danish crews have started using because it confuses coastal watches. The actual Vestfold ships haven't raided this coast in 3 years. They're working the Frankish rivers now, where the silver flows heavier and the bishops pay faster. The Red Cross sail has become the 9th century equivalent of a knockoff brand. Easy to copy, hard to verify, useful for crews who want the reputation without the organizational backing. You say nothing. We are not accusing your company, Brother Aidan adds quickly. We are asking whether the arrangement we have can extend to preventing such visits. This is the 9th century equivalent of asking whether your service contract includes protection from competitors you don't control. The answer is technically no. But the answer they want to hear is something more flexible. We can send word along the coast, you say carefully. Make it known this monastery is under existing agreement. Most crews respect that. Most. No one controls the sea. You meet the abbot's eyes. But we can make raiding here expensive enough that it's not worth the trouble. The abbot considers this. And your price for such a service? Same tribute as agreed. With one addition. When we arrive, you signal from the tower where the other ships have been seen in the last week. We adjust our route accordingly. Brother Aidan glances at the abbot. Something passes between them that you can't read. That is acceptable, the abbot says finally. The agreement is made. You reach for the ale. Warm, slightly sour. Exactly like every other monastery ale you've tasted from here to Francia. Thorvald shifts his weight near the door. You ignore him. There is one other matter, the abbot says quietly. A personal one. It involves your navigator. You set the cup down. Thorvald doesn't move, but his breathing changes. Just enough. Last season, the abbot continues, he made a promise to escort a traveller north to Lindisfarne. The traveller was my nephew. He left under your man's word of safe passage. He did not arrive. The room gets smaller. I am not asking for weregild, the abbot says. I am asking for the truth of what happened. You turn to look at Thorvald. He's staring at the floor. This is the moment where 17 seasons of reading coastlines become 17 seasons of reading men who've just been caught in something they thought was buried. Not here, you say to the abbot. I'll hear it first, then you'll hear it from me. The abbot nods slowly. Before you sail. Before we sail. You stand. The meeting is over. Brother Aidan moves to show you out, but you already know the way. Outside, the afternoon light is thin and grey. The crew is visible down at the shingle, checking the ship's keel. Thorvald walks 3 steps behind you, saying nothing. Not yet. But soon. You walk north along the cliff path where the monastery wall meets empty grassland, far enough from the guest hall that voices won't carry. Close enough to the edge that the wind covers the sound of boots on stone. Thorvald follows. He hasn't spoken since you left the abbot's presence. When you stop, he stops. The sea is 60 feet below, grey water breaking white against black rock. The wind smells like salt and wet wool. Tell it, you say. He looks at the horizon, not at you. Never at you during something like this. His name was Cuthbert, Thorvald says, young, maybe 19 winters. The abbot asked if we take him north when we finished the Lindisfarne trade run last season. Said the boy wanted to study at the scriptorium there, wanted to be a scribe. You wait. I said yes, we had the room, the weather was holding, it was 1 man, 1 week's sail. He stops. Starts again. We made Lindisfarne on schedule. Delivered the hides. Took on the salted fish they'd promised. Cuthbert went ashore with his pack and his writing box. I saw him meet the monks at the dock. The wind pulls at your cloak. Thorvald's jaw is tight. We stayed 2 days. Normal layover. On the second night Cuthbert came back to the ship. Said he'd changed his mind. Said the brothers there were too strict, the work too hard, he wanted to go home. Thorvald's voice stays flat. He offered silver. Not much. Enough. You can see where this is going. You let him finish. I told him we weren't sailing south for another month. Told him to wait, or find another ship. He said he'd already tried. No one was headed to this coast until after harvest. He offered more silver. Thorvald pauses. I said no. He'd made his choice. I delivered him. My part was done. But he didn't stay, you say. No. Thorvald's hands curl into fists, then relax. 3 days after we left, a trader out of Dublin reported finding wreckage south of Lindisfarne. Small boat. The kind fishermen use for short runs. Cuthbert's writing box washed up 2 days later near Bamborough. The shape of it is clear now. The boy panicked. Tried to sail home alone in a coast boat not meant for open water. The sea did what the sea does. Why didn't you tell me, you ask? Because I didn't kill him. Thorvald's voice hardens. I didn't put him in that boat. I didn't force him to leave. I gave him the answer any captain would give. Wait for safe passage, or stay where you are. He chose neither. Technically true. Practically true. Also true. A 19-year-old boy is dead because your navigator valued his schedule over one passenger's fear. The abbot doesn't see it that way, you say. The abbot wants someone to blame. The abbot wants to know his nephew died because he was stupid, not because we were cruel. Thorvald turns to face you finally. I wasn't cruel, I was clear. You believe him. You also know it doesn't matter, the boy is dead. The promise was broken. The abbot's question stands. You'll tell him what you told me, you say. Exactly that. No excuses, no justifications, just the facts. And then? Then he decides whether we sail with his blessing or without it. Thorvald's expression doesn't change, but something in his shoulders settles. He nods once. You turn back toward the monastery. The light is fading. The crew will be expecting you before dark. Behind you, Thorvald says quietly, I think about it. You stop. I think about telling him to wait, he continues. Telling him the sea doesn't care how scared you are. I think about it most nights when the wind's up. You don't turn around. Then you know what you owe him. I know. The walk back is silent. The guest hall is empty when you arrive. Brother Aidan is waiting outside. The abbot will see you both now, he says. Inside, the abbot sits in the same position as before. His hands are folded. His expression is unreadable. Thorvald stands in the center of the room and tells it exactly as he told you. No embellishment, no deflection. When he finishes, the silence is long. You gave him the truth, the abbot says finally. That is more than some men would do. Thorvald nods, says nothing. My nephew was afraid of failure, the abbot continues. He was afraid of disappointing me. He made a choice born of that fear. You did not make it for him. The abbot stands, moves to the small table near the brazier, returns with a wooden cross on a leather cord, simple, worn, the kind a traveler carries. This was found with his writing box, the abbot says. I ask that you carry it north when you sail. Return it to Lindisfarne. Tell them Cuthbert will not be joining them. Thorvald takes the cross. His hand closes around it. I will, he says. The abbot nods. Then we are finished. Outside, the stars are beginning to show. The crew has the ship secured for the night. Thorvald walks down to the shingle without speaking. You watch him go. The cross is a weight he'll carry farther than Lindisfarne. That's the way of it. The wind shifts. The monastery bell rings vespers. You head toward the fire. The crew gathers around the evening fire on the shingle. 23 men, 1 ship, 1 season nearly finished. Kjeld is sharpening his axe with slow, methodical strokes. Rolf is checking the wool bales one more time, making sure the ropes haven't slackened. Orm is carving something from driftwood. A bird, maybe, or a dragon. It's too early in the process to tell. You sit on the overturned crate that serves as the captain's chair when there's no deck beneath you. Thorvald is down by the waterline, staring at nothing. He'll come back when he's ready. What did the abbot want? Kjeld asks without looking up from his blade. Next season's terms. And? Same tribute, we signal when we arrive. They signal back if other ships have been sighted. Orm pauses in his carving. They're asking us to guard them. They're asking us to make it known they're guarded. You correct. Different thing. Is it? Rolf says. Yes, you shift on the crate. A guard stays, we sail. But if the word spreads that raiding this coast means dealing with us later, most crews will choose easier targets. Kjeld tests the edge of his axe against his thumb. Most. No system is perfect. And if someone doesn't care about the word, if they raid anyway, then we hear about it, you say. And we adjust our route next season to make a point. The fire crackles. Orm goes back to his carving. Rolf settles against a wool bale with his eyes half closed. These men have been with you long enough to know when a decision is final. They don't always agree. They always accept. What about the navigator? Kjeld asks quietly. You glance toward the waterline. Thorvald is still there, a dark shape against darker water. Settled, you say. Kjeld nods, asks nothing more. The abbot's offer sits in your mind like a stone in your boot. Not painful yet, but present. The protection arrangement is simple in theory. In practice, it requires trust your crew does not yet have. Trust that the monks will signal honestly. Trust that other crews will respect the boundary. Trust that you can enforce consequences from 300 miles away. Trust is expensive. The abbot is offering silver security and reputation in exchange for it. The calculation is fair. That doesn't make it easy. Orm holds up his carving. It's a ship. Rough, simple, unmistakable. For the abbot, he says. Hospitality gift. Show him we're traders. We are traders, Rolf mutters without opening his eyes. Today, Kjeld says. The axe goes back into its sheath. The wind picks up. The fire bends sideways, then straightens. Down the beach, Thorvald turns and walks back toward the group. He sits on the sand outside the firelight and says nothing. This is how it works. Men carry what they carry. The ship carries them. You carry the ship. The night deepens. One by one the crew settles into sleep, wrapped in cloaks, backs against driftwood, boots toward the fire. You stay awake longer, watching the embers shift and collapse. The monastery bell rings compline. The sound carries across the distance, low and steady. 17 seasons, 64 ports, 12 monasteries that pay on time, 5 that don't, 3 that aren't worth the trouble anymore. You know the calculus. You know the risks. You know what happens when a promise breaks and a boy drowns because fear outweighed patience. You know all of it. And still, the sea is the sea. The wind is the wind. The ship sails when the tide allows. Thorvald shifts in the darkness. You hear the faint sound of leather cord moving against fabric. The cross, being tucked inside his tunic. The fire burns lower. The stars wheel overhead. The waves break against the shingle in steady rhythm. Tomorrow you finish the inspection, load the last of the trade goods, take the abbot's silver and his trust in equal measure. Tonight you sit, you watch. You let the weight of the season settle where it will. The wind smells like salt and stone and the smoke of green wood. It smells like every coast you've ever known. Brother Aidan arrives at the shingle just after dawn, carrying a leather satchel that weighs more than any Bible you've seen. He doesn't wait for an invitation, just sets the satchel down on a flat stone near the tide line and opens it with the kind of care people reserve for things that could get them killed. Inside, manuscripts. 3 of them. Old vellum, dark ink, Latin text you can't read but recognize as the kind of thing Frankish collectors pay silver for. The abbot doesn't know I'm here, Brother Aidan says. You wait. These are copies, he continues, made last winter. The originals remain in the scriptorium. But there's a 4th item, not a manuscript, a letter. From who? A Mercian bishop, to the monastery, discussing the movements of King Ceolwulf's supporters after his removal. You understand immediately, a letter like that isn't devotional literature. It's intelligence. The kind that tells you which nobles backed the losing side of a succession dispute, which estates are vulnerable, which families are looking for protection they can't get from their current king. In the wrong hands, or the right ones, depending on your perspective, it's a map of Mercia's internal fractures. And you're offering this because? Because 3 crews have asked about the scriptorium in the last 2 seasons, Brother Aidan says. Because eventually someone will stop asking and simply take. Because I would prefer the monastery survives the next 5 years, with its walls intact and its brothers unharmed. And because you, specifically, have a reputation for keeping agreements. Thorvald is standing 10 paces back, watching this conversation with an expression that suggests he knows exactly what Brother Aidan just offered, and exactly why it's dangerous. You pick up one of the manuscript copies. The vellum is good quality. The script is clean. Frankish monasteries pay well for texts they don't have, and these are rare enough to command premium rates. The letter stays in the scriptorium, you ask? For now, until we determine what happens to it. You're the one who decides whether this monastery gets raided or protected, Jarl. That makes us partners in a very narrow sense. You set the manuscript down. Look at the satchel, look at Brother Aidan. The letter is the real value here. The manuscripts are the tribute payment. Acceptable, safe, something your crew can sell without political consequences. But the letter is leverage. Information about Mercian nobility that could be sold to rivals, used to target vulnerable estates, or traded to other Norse crews looking for soft targets inland. It's also the kind of thing that gets you killed if the wrong king finds out you have it. How many people know about the letter, you ask? The abbot. Myself. The bishop who sent it, presumably the bishop's scribe. And now me. And now you. You consider this. The manuscripts alone would satisfy the crew's expectations for this stop. Nobody's expecting a major haul. This monastery has been cooperative for 3 seasons, and cooperative arrangements don't produce dramatic profits. They produce consistency. But the letter changes the risk profile entirely. Possessing it means you become a person of interest to Mercian intelligence networks. It means other crews might see you as competition. It means the monastery becomes more valuable, and therefore more dangerous, to visit. I need to think about this, you say. Brother Aidan nods, closes the satchel, leaves it on the stone. The manuscripts are yours regardless, he says. Consider them this season's tribute. The letter is a separate negotiation, one I suspect you'll want to discuss with your navigator first. He walks back toward the monastery without waiting for a response. You watch him go. Then you look at Thorvald. Thorvald says nothing. Just picks up the satchel and carries it toward the ship. The morning tide is 2 hours out. The crew is awake, moving through the routine of a ship preparing to depart, checking rigging, securing cargo, the small mechanical tasks that fill the space between decisions. You don't follow Thorvald immediately. You stand at the tide line, watching the water advance across sand that will be covered completely within the hour. The letter exists whether you take it or not. That's the problem. Someone will take it eventually. The only question is whether that someone is you, and what you do with it afterward. Thorvald spreads the manuscripts across the steering platform that night, using a whale oil lamp to examine the script. Gospel commentaries, he says. Augustine. 2 copies of the same text, different hands. The third is Jerome, Vulgate Marginalia. What do they sell for? In Paris, 4 silver marks for the pair. The Jerome is cleaner, maybe 5 on its own. Total value, 9 marks if you find the right buyer, 6 if you're in a hurry. 9 marks. Enough to keep the crew fed through winter, pay for ship repairs, cover the cost of this voyage with margin left over. A successful season by any reasonable measure. And the letter, you ask? Thorvald doesn't answer immediately. He rolls the manuscripts carefully, returns them to the satchel, extinguishes the lamp. In the darkness, his voice comes without expression. The letter tells you which Mercian the GNS supported Sheolwulf before Burgred took the throne. Which estates backed the losing side. Which families are isolated now, lacking royal protection. That's worth more than 9 marks. To the right buyer. To a crew looking for inland targets. To someone who wants to know which compounds won't get reinforcements when the FYRD is called. He shifts position. You hear the creak of wood, the small adjustment of weight. It's also worth your life if Burgred's men find out you traded it. Or if Sealwolf's remaining supporters think you're using it against them. Or if another Norse Jarl decides you're competition. The wind has picked up. The ship rocks gently at anchor. The rhythm identical to 50 other nights on this coast. Brother Aidan is buying protection, you say. He's buying time, Thorvald corrects. Maybe 3 years, maybe 5. Eventually some crew will want more than manuscripts. But by then the abbot will be dead or transferred. The letter will be old intelligence, and whatever happens won't be Aidan's problem anymore. And us? We take the manuscripts. We leave the letter, we maintain the arrangement. The monastery stays cooperative, we have a reliable stop on the northern route, everyone survives. It's the logical choice, the safe choice, the choice that preserves an asset that has value precisely because it hasn't been destroyed. You've made this kind of decision before. The monastery at Lindisfarne could have been sacked. You had the crew, the timing, the element of surprise. Instead, you negotiated. Took tribute. Established terms. 3 years later, Lindisfarne is still standing and still paying, and you're still alive, because you didn't make yourself a target for every Northumbrian warband looking to avenge a slaughtered monastery. The letter is different only in degree, more valuable, more dangerous, same principle. How long before another crew asks about it, you ask? Aidan said 3 crews in 2 seasons. That's accelerating. I'd give it 1 more year, maybe 2. And when they ask? Aidan offers them manuscripts. Same as he offered us. If they're smart, they take the manuscripts. If they're greedy. Thorvald doesn't finish the sentence. You stand, walk to the rail. The coast isn't visible in the darkness, but you know exactly where it is. The monastery, the shingle. The stone, where Brother Aidan set down his satchel. Somewhere in that scriptorium is a piece of vellum that makes you dangerous to a king, not because of what you do with it, because of what other people would assume you might do with it. The calculation is clean, the risk exceeds the reward, the letter stays. But knowing it exists, that's different. You can't unknow what Brother Aidan told you. Can't pretend Mercian politics are someone else's problem when you've just been handed a map of whose estates are vulnerable. Do we tell the crew, you ask? About the letter, no. About the manuscripts, yes. 9 marks is a good haul for a cooperative stop. They'll be satisfied. Satisfied. The word sits strangely. Not happy, not disappointed. Just satisfied. The crew functions on satisfied. You've built 3 years of survival on keeping people satisfied instead of greedy. The lamp flickers in Thorvald's quarters below deck. Someone is awake. Knut, probably, checking the cargo tie-downs the way he does every night before sleep. We leave at dawn, you say. Agreed. You return to your sea chest. Inside, personal items, navigation tools, a small bag of silver that represents your share of the last 3 trades. Enough to live on for a season if everything else fails. You don't add the letter to that chest, you don't ask Brother Aidan for it. You make the choice that lets you sleep without wondering which king's men are looking for you. But you remember the choice exists. Remember that someone will make it eventually, and what happens after won't be Brother Aidan's problem. The ship leaves Whitby on the morning tide, 9 silver marks richer, 1 dangerous opportunity declined. The return voyage to Jorvik takes 4 days. The wind is steady from the south, the kind of wind that lets you set the sail and make distance without constantly adjusting course. Thorvald handles navigation with the ease of someone who's run this route enough times that the landmarks are memorized. Headlands, river mouths, the specific shape of cliffs that tell you where you are without needing to check the sun. The crew is quiet, not tense, not celebratory, just focused on the work of moving a ship up the coast. You spend most of the voyage on the steering platform, watching the shore pass. The coast here is a sequence of small variations on the same theme: beaches, cliffs, river deltas, the occasional settlement visible as smoke or movement inland. You've seen this view dozens of times, but it doesn't become routine. Every voyage, the details are different. Different season, different light, different weather shaping what you can see and when. On the second day, Knut approaches. The manuscripts, he says. They're good quality. Thorvald says, 9 marks in Paris. Knut nods, waits. You know what he's asking without him needing to state it. We took what was offered, you say. The monastery remains cooperative. We'll stop there again next season. And if another crew doesn't wait until next season, then Brother Aidan deals with them the same way he dealt with us. Manuscripts for cooperation. It's worked for 3 years. Knut considers this. Then, the crew is asking if there was more. Of course they are. The crew always knows when there's more. Not the details, just the shape of it. The sense that a negotiation happened and certain options were declined. There was, you say, we declined it. The risk was too high. How high? The kind that gets kings interested in your name. Knut absorbs this without expression. He's been on enough voyages to understand what that means. Been in enough situations where the difference between profit and disaster was knowing which opportunities to refuse. Understood, he says. Then he returns to the main deck. You watch him go. Watch him rejoin the crew, say something brief that produces nods and a return to work. No argument, no dissent. Just acceptance that the decision was made, and the reason was sound. Jorvik appears on the 4th afternoon, the river mouth first, then the settlement spreading along both banks, the trading quarter visible as a dense cluster of buildings near the water. The ship docks at the usual wharf. The harbour master recognizes you, waves you through without inspection. You've paid enough docking fees over the years to be known as reliable. Thorvald handles the manuscript sale. He's gone for 3 hours, returns with a leather purse that he opens on the wharf to show you the contents. 9 silver marks, exactly as estimated. Frankish monastery representative, he says. He's in Jorvik buying texts for their library, didn't haggle, paid asking price. You distribute shares immediately, the crew gets their portion, calculated fairly, counted in front of witnesses. No disputes, no complaints. Just silver changing hands and men walking away satisfied. Your share goes into your sea chest, 3 marks. Enough to cover winter expenses, pay for ship maintenance, fund the next voyage. the amount that keeps you operational without making you wealthy. The ship stays in Jorvik for 2 days. Crew disperses into the town, some to drink, some to trade, some to visit family or contacts they've maintained across seasons. You stay on board the first night, checking cargo, reviewing ship condition, handling the administrative tasks that pile up during voyages. On the second night, Thorvald finds you at the stern rail. "The letter," he says. "What about it? If we'd taken it, if we'd sold the intelligence, do you know what we'd be doing right now?" You wait. "Planning the next move," Thorvald says, "not resting. Not preparing for winter. Planning. Because once you sell intelligence like that, you become a source. People come back, they expect more. And if you can't deliver, they start wondering if you sold them bad information the first time." He leans against the rail beside you. "We made the right choice," he continues. "But it's worth remembering that right choices don't feel like victories, they feel like maintenance." The town is settling into evening, lamps being lit, voices carrying across the water, the small sounds of a trading port at rest. "How many more seasons do you think the monastery arrangement holds?" you ask. 3, Thorvald says. "Maybe 4. Eventually someone breaks it. Not because they're stupid, because circumstances change, and the risk calculation shifts. And when that happens, we find another cooperative monastery. Or we adjust the route. The coast is long. There are other arrangements to be made." He straightens, prepares to leave, then pauses. "The crew trusts you," he says, "not because you make them rich. Because you make decisions that let them survive long enough to spend what they earn. Don't underestimate the value of that." He returns below deck. You remain at the rail, watching Jorvik settle into night, listening to the water move against the hull in rhythms that never change regardless of what cargo you carry, or which opportunities you decline. Brother Aidan arrives on the beach just before noon. He carries no satchel this time, just himself and a message. "The abbot wishes to speak with you," he says, "before you leave." You walk up to the monastery with Thorvald. The scriptorium is exactly where Brother Aidan said it would be. A stone room on the north side of the cloister, small windows, shelves against tree walls. The manuscripts are stacked in groups, organized. Someone has been expecting this conversation. The abbot is older than you thought. White hair, steady hands, the kind of calm that comes from managing the same problem for 20 years. "You know what these are worth," he says. "I do. Brother Aidan tells me you could sell them in Jorvik for 30 marks, perhaps 40 in the right market." "That's accurate." The abbot nods. "I am asking you not to." You wait. 17 seasons ago, the abbot says, your ship came here, a younger crew, a different commander. One of your men made a promise. He would not take what could not be replaced. In exchange, we would pay tribute fairly and without delay. Thorvald shifts his weight beside you. You don't look at him. "The promise was kept for 11 years, the abbot continues. "Then it wasn't. A man died. Not here, Lindisfarne. But the promise died with him." "I know the story," you say. "Then you know what I'm asking." The room is silent except for the sound of wind against stone. You look at the manuscripts. Irish script. Frankish illumination. Gospels that took 3 years to copy. The kind of thing that has buyers, because it cannot be replaced. "If I take these," you say, "your tribute agreement ends. The next crew that comes here won't negotiate. They'll assume the arrangement is broken." "Yes. If I don't take them, my crew thinks I left silver on the beach because a monk asked nicely." "Also yes." You walk to the nearest shelf, run your hand along the spines. The vellum is smooth under your fingers, expensive, irreplaceable. "What's it worth to you?" you ask. "More than 40 marks." That's not an answer. The abbot meets your eyes. "It's worth the next 17 seasons." It's worth every crew that comes after you knowing that the tribute system works. It's worth you being able to return here without burning what you built. You consider that. Thorvald finally speaks. The crew will want an explanation. Then explain it, the abbot says. Tell them the truth. Taking these manuscripts makes you 40 marks richer, and permanently closes this coast. Leaving them keeps the arrangement intact, and lets you come back next season with less risk and more certainty. They won't like it. They don't have to like it, they just have to accept it. You look at Thorvald, he's staring at the manuscripts with an expression you've seen before. 11 years ago, on a different beach, when a younger man made a promise he thought he could keep. The promise, you say to the abbot. The one that was made 17 seasons ago, was it you? It was. And the man who broke it, you knew him? I buried him. The wind shifts. The shutters rattle. I'll speak to the crew, you say. The fire on the beach that night is smaller than usual. The crew gathers close. You explain the situation in the language they understand. Risk, reward, long-term calculation. The manuscripts are worth 40 marks now. The tribute agreement is worth more than that over time. Taking one destroys the other. The arithmetic is clear. Halfdan asks the question everyone is thinking. What if the next crew doesn't care about the arrangement? Then the arrangement ends, you say. But that's not our problem tonight. Tonight, we decide what we do. Not what someone else does next season. The vote is quiet. No one argues, no one objects. The crew has been with you long enough to trust the calculation. They don't have to like it. They just have to accept it. Thorvald sits near the fire afterward, saying nothing. You sit down beside him. The promise holds, you say. He nods. For now. That's all any promise ever does. The tide is 2 hours out. The ship is loaded. The wind is steady from the south. In the morning, you'll sail north to Vestfold, with 9 marks of silver, and a cargo of wool, and the knowledge that next season, this coast, will still be open. The monastery bell rings for evening prayer. The sound carries across the water. Thorvald stands, stretches, walks toward the ship. You remain at the fire. The flames are low. The crew is settling in for the night. 17 seasons of this work, and it still comes down to the same calculation. What you take now, versus what you can take later. The arrangement holds. The wind stays steady for 3 days. The kind of wind that lets you sleep in shifts, and wake to find the coast exactly where you expected it. No drama. No corrections. Just distance covered, and Vestfold growing closer with every hour. Thorvald navigates without speaking. His silence is comfortable now. The kind of quiet that means the work is done, and the season is ending, and the only thing left is the voyage home. You stand at the rail in the grey light before dawn. The water is dark, the air smells like salt, and the particular cold that comes just before autumn turns into something harder. Your hands are stiff on the wood. 17 seasons of this, and your body still registers every degree the temperature drops. The crew rows in rhythm. The oars move through the water with the sound you've heard 10,000 times. Steady. Efficient. The sound of men who know their work and do it without needing to be told. The coast slides past. Headlands, beaches, villages with smoke rising from morning fires. You know these places, not by name, by shape, the curve of a bay, the angle of a cliff, the distance between anchorage points. This coast is a map you carry in your body now. 17 seasons of reading it. Memorizing it. Learning which places pay tribute and which places don't, and which places used to but won't anymore. Halfdan asks a question you don't quite hear. You tell him to check the water barrels. He does. The work continues. The monastery is 3 days behind you now. The manuscripts are still on their shelves. The abbot is still alive. the tribute agreement still holds. You made a choice, and the choice held, and now you're sailing north with 9 marks of silver and the knowledge that next season, you can come back. That's the arrangement. That's always been the arrangement. You think about Thorvald's promise, the one made 17 seasons ago, the one kept for 11 years, the one broken at Lindisfarne, the one you just remade on a beach in Northumbria because a monk asked, and because the arithmetic made sense, and because sometimes keeping a promise is more valuable than breaking it. The wind shifts slightly. Thorvald adjusts the sail without being asked. The ship responds. The distance to Vestfold shrinks. You've made this voyage 20 times, maybe more. It always feels the same at the end. The fatigue settling into your shoulders, the cold working its way into your joints. The awareness that another season is finished, and another winter is coming, and next spring you'll do this again. The crew is quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from exhaustion and relief in equal measure. They're thinking about home. Fires. Families. Solid ground. The things that matter when the sea is finally behind you. The sun breaks through low cloud for a moment, the light catches the water. You watch it spread across the surface in a line that runs from horizon to hull. The warmth is brief, barely enough to feel. But it's there. The difference between grey morning and something softer. You close your eyes. Let the light rest on your face. The wind is still cold. Your hands are still stiff. But for this one moment, the sun remembers summer. The moment passes. The cloud closes again. The light fades. The cold returns. You remain at the rail. The water moves past the hull. Vestfold is 2 days out, maybe less, if the wind holds. The arrangement holds. The harbour at Vestfold appears in the grey afternoon light. You see the ships first. Familiar hulls, familiar lines, crews you've rowed beside and negotiated with, and occasionally competed against. The beach is crowded. The season is ending for everyone. Thorvald brings the ship in smoothly. The keel touches shingle, the crew jumps out, starts unloading. The work is automatic now. No one needs instruction. They know what goes where and in what order and how long it takes. You step onto the beach. Your legs adjust to solid ground. The weight in your shoulders shifts. 17 seasons, and this moment still feels like the first deep breath after holding your lungs closed. The silver gets divided on the beach, 9 marks, split according to shares agreed upon before the voyage started. No arguments, no disputes. The crew knows the system. They've been using it long enough to trust it. Halfdan gets his share and nods, and walks toward the village without looking back. 3 others follow. The beach empties slowly. By sunset it's just you and Thorvald and the ship, and the quiet that comes when the season is finally over. Next spring? Thorvald asks. Next spring. He walks up the beach toward the village. You remain beside the ship. The tide is coming in. The water moves around the keel in small waves that sound like every coast you've ever known. The cargo is unloaded. The tribute is divided. The promises are kept. The arrangement holds. You run your hand along the ship's rail. The wood is cold, smooth, worn by 17 seasons of salt water and hard use. Your hand knows every inch of this rail, every repair, every patch. This ship has carried you through more negotiations than you can count. More anchorages, more seasons. A gull calls from somewhere up the beach. The sound is sharp against the quiet. You turn. The bird is standing near the waterline, watching the tide come in. It does not move, does not search for food, just stands, waiting for something only it understands. You watch it for a moment. Then it lifts into the air without warning. Gone. The light fades. The beach grows dark. The village fires are visible now. Small points of warmth against the cold. You'll walk up there soon. Find food. Find a place to sleep that doesn't move with the tide. But not yet. For now you stand at the rail, the water moves against the hull, the sound is familiar. Steady, the rhythm of the sea against wood. The rhythm of 17 seasons. The rhythm of a career built on reading coastlines and making calculations, and knowing when to take and when to wait. The wind is cold. Your breath makes small clouds in the air. Winter is coming, the sea will freeze, the ships will stay on the beach until spring. And then you'll do this again. The arrangement holds. The oars rest across the thwarts, still wet from the pull that brought you into this bay. The weight of them at rest feels different than the weight of them in motion. Heavier, somehow, now that the work is done for the day. You run your hand along the nearest shaft where the wood is smooth from 17 seasons of hands finding the same grip, and the grain catches the last of the daylight, like water moving under ice. The ship sits at anchor in shallow water off a beach you have used before. The keel rests easy on sand you can see through the clear grey water when you lean over the rail. No monastery here, no settlement worth the name. Just a curve of shingle where a stream meets the sea, and the land rises gentle behind it toward low hills that hold their shape against the evening sky. Thorvald is forward, checking the anchor line where it runs through the bow ring. He moves like a man who has done this same task 1,000 times and will do it 1,000 more. The kind of movement that requires no thought because thought was exhausted from it years ago. The line is taut, the anchor is holding, the ship will be here in the morning exactly where you left it tonight. The crew is spreading out along the beach, building the fire where the streamstones make a natural ring. Someone has already gathered driftwood, the grey twisted pieces that burn hot and smell like salt, and stacked it in the practiced geometry of men who know that fire is the difference between a good camp and a cold one. The first flames catch, smoke rises straight up in air that has gone still with evening. You remain at the rail, watching the light change on the water. The tide is going out. Slowly. The kind of slow that lets you see it happening if you watch long enough but never catches you by surprise. The waterline drops past marks on the beach stones that you remember from last year. The same stones, the same marks, the same coast holding its shape while everything else moves. The silver from Whitby is packed in the locked chest under the steering platform. 9 marks. Enough to make the season successful even if you turn south tomorrow, and made straight for Vestfold without another stop. Enough to split fairly among a crew that has earned it through decisions that could have gone wrong but didn't. You can still feel the weight of the manuscript in your hands from this morning when Brother Aidan showed you what he had and what it might bring in the Frankish markets. The vellum was thick. The script was clean. The kind of object that represents months of labor by someone whose name you will never know, and whose work might survive longer than the monastery that produced it. You handed it back, made the choice, walked away from what it might have brought, because the risk was clearer than the reward. That was the right decision. You know this because you are standing here now, watching evening settle over a beach where your crew is safe and your ship is sound, and the season still has days left in it, before the weather turns. The other decision, the one you didn't make, would have led somewhere else, and you will never know where, and that is how good decisions work. The water moves against the hull, in soft sounds that have no rhythm you can name. Not waves, not quite stillness. The sound of water being water in the hour when the tide turns and the wind dies and the coast becomes the quietest version of itself. You lean against the rail and let the wood take your weight and feel the day's work settle into your shoulders and back, like something physical that can finally be set down. Thorvald is walking back along the deck toward you. He stops at the mast, checks a line that doesn't need checking, then continues. When he reaches the stern, he leans against the opposite rail and says nothing for a long moment. Just stands there, looking at the same beach you are looking at, breathing the same evening air. Good anchorage, he says finally. It is. The fire will be ready soon. Yes. He is quiet again, Then, you made the right choice, about the manuscripts. You don't answer immediately. The statement doesn't require an answer, it requires acknowledgement that he said it, which is different. After a moment you nod once. The crew understands, Thorvald continues. Some of them don't like it, but they understand it. That's what matters. Is that what you came back here to tell me? No. He shifts his weight. I came back here because standing at the bow looking at the same beach gets boring after a while, and you look like you might appreciate the company. I was wrong apparently. You almost smile. Don't quite. The company is fine. The conversation is adequate. I'll take adequate. He pushes off the rail, stretches, rolls his shoulders in the way men do when they have spent the day rowing, and the evening has finally given them permission to notice they are tired. Come eat when you are ready. The fish will be fresh. Halfdan caught them this afternoon while you were busy being responsible. He walks forward toward the beach, without waiting for a response. You watch him go, watch him drop over the side into the shallow water and wade ashore with his boots in one hand, and his trousers roll to his knees like a man who stopped caring about dignity, around the same time he stopped caring about cold water. The evening is settling, the light is fading. The fire on the beach is bright enough now that you can see faces around it. Familiar shapes, familiar movements. The crew becoming themselves again after a day of being the dangerous foreigners that monasteries negotiate with, and settlements calculate around. Here on this beach they are just men who are tired and hungry and glad to be done rowing for the day. You will join them soon, in a moment. When the light is fully gone, and the water has finished whatever it is doing with the tide, and the ship has settled into its anchorage for the night. For now, you remain at the rail, feeling the wood against your palms, and the weight of another day's decisions becoming something you can finally stop carrying. The smell reaches you before you reach the fire, salt water and pine tar, and the honest smell of the ship, wool and wood, and the particular blend of human sweat that accumulates when 30 men row for days without changing clothes. It should be unpleasant. It isn't. It is the smell of work completed, of a crew that functions, of a season that is going well enough that you can sit down and eat fish around a fire without watching the tree line for problems. You drop into the shallow water and wade ashore. The cold moves up through your legs in the methodical way that cold water always does. Ankles first, then calves, then the moment where your body reminds you that this was optional, and you chose it anyway. By the time you reach dry shingle, your feet are numb, and the fire looks better than it did from the ship. The crew has spread out in the loose circle that forms when men who work together all day choose to sit together all evening. Halfdan is turning fish on a flat stone at the fire's edge, using a piece of driftwood as a spatula, because no one bothered to bring proper cooking tools from the ship, and improvisation has always been cheaper than preparation. The fish skin is blistering, the smell is good. You find a place at the fire's edge and sit. The warmth hits your face and hands immediately, the kind of direct heat that feels like something physical pressing against you. Your shoulders settle. Your back finds the shape of the stone behind you. For the first time since morning, you are not calculating anything. Fish is almost ready, Halfdan says without looking up from his work. Another minute, maybe 2. Take your time, you say. Across the fire, Gunnar is working a piece of rope into a splice, his hands moving through the familiar pattern, without conscious attention while he watches the flames. Beside him, Orm is cleaning his knife with a piece of cloth that has seen better days. These are the evening tasks, the small necessary work that fills the space between rowing and sleeping, and requires no thought, because thought has been exhausted for the day. Thorvald settles beside you, bringing with him a water skin that he offers without comment. You take it, drink, hand it back. The water is still cold from the stream. It tastes like the land here, minerals and peat and something clean that comes from water that runs over stone instead of through cities. Halfdan thinks we should stop at Jorvik again on the way back, Thorvald says quietly. He heard something from one of the English traders. New abbot. Possibly more reasonable than the last one. You watch the fire for a moment before answering. New abbots are usually less reasonable. They have something to prove. That's what I told him. What did he say? That it might be worth checking anyway, that information is cheap and opportunities are expensive. Thorvald pauses. His words, not mine. You consider this. Halfdan is young enough to still believe that every situation contains an opportunity if you look hard enough, but old enough to have learnt that looking has costs. It is not a stupid suggestion, it is also not a necessary one. We'll see, you say, depends on the weather, depends on the tides. Depends on whether we pick up anything worth trading between here and there. That's what I told him, you'd say. Then why are you telling me at all? Thorvald shrugs. Because he asked me to. And because sometimes you change your mind when you have time to think about it. I am simply providing the time. The fish is ready. Halfdan lifts the stone from the fire using the edges of his cloak as protection and carries it to the circle. The fish breaks apart easily when he pushes the driftwood against it. White flesh steaming in the evening air. He portions it out onto pieces of flat bread that are probably a day old, but become adequate plates when the alternative is eating with your hands. You take your portion. The fish is hot enough that you have to wait before eating it, hot enough that holding the bread requires shifting it from hand to hand while the heat soaks through. This is good. This is what warm food is supposed to feel like after a day of cold water and colder wind. The crew eats in the comfortable silence of men who have nothing to prove to each other. Across the fire, someone laughs at something you don't hear. Someone else responds with a comment that gets a different kind of laugh, the kind that comes from recognition rather than surprise. These are sounds you have heard on 17 seasons of beaches exactly like this one. The specific words change. The rhythm doesn't. When the fish is gone and the bread is gone and the fire has settled into the steady burn, that means the good wood is finished and the rest is just maintenance. Gunnar speaks up from across the circle. The monastery, he says. Not quite a question, not quite a statement. An opening for you to fill if you choose to fill it. You wait, let him clarify. The new wall, Gunnar continues. The runner. The way the abbot met us at the gate instead of making us wait. You saw something there. Something that made you careful. This is true. You did see something. The question is what Gunnar is actually asking, and why he is asking it in front of the whole crew instead of pulling you aside later. I saw a monastery that is learning, you say. Not fast, but learning. Learning what? That timber walls are cheaper than tribute. That runners who stop moving send a message. That greeting visitors at the gate instead of from behind it changes the negotiation before the negotiation starts. You shift the bread in your hands, feel the remaining heat. They're getting better at this. That doesn't make them more dangerous. It makes them more predictable. Predictable is easier to work with. Orm looks up from his knife. Until predictable becomes defended. Yes, until then. You meet his eyes across the fire. Which is why we take tribute and leave the manuscripts. Today they are learning to negotiate. Next year they might be learning to say no. The year after that they might have enough men behind that wall that no becomes permanent. We work with what is true now, not what might be true later. This seems to satisfy him, or at least it satisfies him enough to return to his knife and the piece of cloth that will never get it any cleaner than it already is. The fire burns lower. The conversation drifts to other things. Repairs needed before reaching Vestfold. Debts owed and debts paid. The rumor that Jarl Sigurd is considering another ship for next season, which means the crew might split, or might double, depending on how the winter negotiations go. You listen without contributing. Let the voices wash over you like water. The tide has turned. You can't see it from here, but you know it by the smell and the sound, and the 17 years of experience that tells you what the sea is doing even when you are not looking at it. The ship will settle differently in an hour. The anchor line will go slack, and then taut again. The morning will bring different water, and the same work. Thorvald stands, stretches, announces to no one in particular that he is going back to the ship because sleeping on deck is better than sleeping on shingle when you have the option. Others follow his lead. Not everyone, but enough that the circle breaks and the fire is left to the men who drew watch duty and the men who are too tired to move just yet. You remain where you are. The warmth is still good. The stone is still comfortable. The evening has not quite finished becoming night. Halfdan settles into the space Thorvald vacated, bringing with him the water skin and the comfortable silence of someone who doesn't need to fill every moment with words. After a while he speaks. "Jorvik," he says, "I know you'll decide based on weather and tides. I'm just saying the information was good, the source was reliable. New abbot, younger, Frankish trained, the kind who thinks negotiation is sophisticated." "And what do you think?" "I think sophisticated abbots are easier to negotiate with than stubborn ones. I think it might be worth a day to find out if I'm right." "You consider this. Then, if the weather holds and the tides are right and we don't lose time between here and there, maybe. But that's 3 conditions, Halfdan. 3 conditions means probably not." He nods, takes this as the answer. It is, not yes, not no, but the truth that conditions matter more than preferences. Fair enough. The fire settles lower, the night settles deeper, the smell of salt water and pine tar and honest work remains. The morning comes slowly, the way it always does when you are anchored in calm water, with no immediate weather to worry about, and no pressing reason to be moving before the sun is fully up. The grey light arrives first, the kind that lets you see shapes but not colors, the kind that means the horizon exists, but the details don't matter yet. You wake because you have trained yourself to wake at this hour, regardless of whether there is work to be done. The deck is damp with the night's condensation. The crew is mostly still asleep. Shapes wrapped in cloaks, breathing in the slow rhythm of men who rowed hard yesterday, and will row hard again today, but for now are simply bodies at rest. Thorvald is already awake. You find him at the bow, looking north at the water that will take you home if you choose to stop negotiating and start traveling. The wind is light, the water is calm. These are the conditions that make decisions easier because they remove weather as a variable. 3 days to Vestfold if we leave now, he says without turning around. Maybe 2.5 if the wind holds. You join him at the rail. And 5 days if we stop at Jorvik first. 5 days minimum. Could be 6, if the new abbot turns out to be the kind who thinks negotiation means talking until everyone is too tired to disagree with him. This makes you almost smile. You've met that kind before. We've both met that kind before. He shifts his weight. So, are we stopping? The question sits between you for a moment. You watch the northern water and think about routes and tides, and the particular arithmetic of a season that has gone well enough that adding 1 more negotiation is optional rather than necessary. 9 silver marks from Whitby. Whatever you might get from Jorvik. Maybe 3 more, maybe none, depending entirely on whether Halfdan's information is accurate, and whether the new abbot has authority to negotiate, or just authority to talk. The manuscripts are still there, you say, in Jorvik, sitting on their shelves, worth something to someone, just not to us. Because taking them means Bjorn Halfblood gets involved, which means the risk stops being simple. Yes. Thorvald nods. So we stop at Jorvik, we talk to the new abbot, we take whatever tribute he's offering if it's reasonable, and we leave the manuscripts alone. Again. That would be the smart version of stopping at Jorvik. And the stupid version? You don't answer immediately. The stupid version is obvious. You get to Jorvik. The new abbot is reasonable, the tribute is good. And then someone mentions the manuscripts, and someone else mentions the Frankish markets. And the whole careful negotiation turns into the kind of opportunity that looks profitable, right up until the moment it becomes complicated. The stupid version, you say finally, is the one where we forget why we said no the first time. Where we convince ourselves that this time is different, because the abbot is younger, or the route is safer, or the profit margin is better. Where we take the manuscripts and spend the whole winter wondering whether Bjorn Halfblood is going to show up in Vestfold, with a very reasonable explanation for why we owe him a percentage. Thorvald is quiet for a long moment, then, "So we are stopping at Jorvik, but we are not taking the manuscripts." If we stop at all, yes, that's the version. The light is improving, the grey is becoming blue. The crew is starting to wake. The sounds of men, moving, stretching, preparing for another day of the work that defines them. Someone is building up the beach fire. Someone else is already checking the rigging. The ship is returning to itself, ready to move when you tell it to move, ready to stay when you tell it to stay. You think about Vestfold, about the harbor you know better than any other harbor on any coast, about the particular way the hills rise behind it, and the specific angle of light when the sun sets behind those hills in autumn, about the people there who will want to know how the season went, and whether you made good decisions, and whether the silver you bring back was earned through intelligence or luck. 17 seasons, 17 times coming home with the answer to those questions. 17 times proving that reading coastlines and reading people and reading the space between raiding and trading is a skill that keeps you alive, and keeps your crew paid, and keeps the arrangement working year after year. We'll decide when we clear this bay, you say. Check the wind, check the tides, see what the morning looks like when we actually have to choose a direction. Thorvald accepts this, and if Halfdan asks, tell him we are thinking about it, which is true. He moves away toward the mast, toward the work of preparing the ship for whatever the day brings. You remain at the bow, watching the northern water hold its color and its shape. The route home is there, constant, patient, waiting for you to choose it. But not yet. The tide is coming in. You can feel it in the way the ship sits. The subtle change in how the hull rests against the water. The small shift in the anchor line's tension. In an hour the water will be high enough to make leaving easy. The wind will be whatever the wind decides to be. The crew will be ready because the crew is always ready. You will make the decision when the decision needs to be made, not before, not after. Exactly when the conditions are clear, and the variables are known, then the route forward is the one that makes the most sense for a crew that has earned its silver, and a season that still has days left in it. The morning continues. The light continues. The water continues its patient work of rising and falling and carrying ships wherever ships need to go. For now you stand at the bow and let the wind move past you and feel the weight of another day's choices settling into place like stones in a wall that will either hold or it won't, and either way, you will know soon enough. The silver weight of the season rests in the ship's center, wrapped in oiled canvas and secured beneath the steering platform where the motion of the sea cannot shift it. 9 marks from Whitby. 4 from the smaller settlement north of the Tyne. The tribute arrangements at 3 monasteries that will hold through winter and make next spring's negotiations simpler. You stand at the rail in the darkness, feeling the wood beneath your palms worn smooth by 17 seasons of exactly this position, at exactly this hour. The crew sleeps in the practiced arrangement of men who have shared this deck through storms and calm and everything between. Halfdan near the mast, Thorvald at the stern, the others distributed in the spaces they have claimed through repetition rather than discussion. The stars overhead are the same stars that were there this morning when you made the first assessment of the monastery's defenses, unchanged by the negotiations, unchanged by the calculations, unchanged by any of it. The water moves against the hull in a rhythm that has nothing to do with the day's decisions. The ship rocks slightly at anchor. Your breathing matches it without thought. The kind of synchronization that happens when you have spent more nights on water than on land, and your body has learned to treat the motion as stillness. The canvas covering the silver makes a small sound when the ship shifts. Not loud, just present, a reminder of weight, successfully carried from one place to another. Thorvald shifts position near the stern. You hear it more than see it. The creak of timber, the adjustment of wool against wood. He does not speak, neither do you. The kind of silence that means both of you are awake, and both of you are content to remain that way, without making it a conversation. The northern coast is a dark line against darker water. No lights visible. The monasteries have closed their gates. The settlements have banked their fires. Everyone who needed to make a decision today has made it, and everyone who needed to survive it has survived it, and that is enough. The wind carries the smell of salt and cold and the particular emptiness of open water at night. You breathe it in, hold it, let it out. The season is effectively finished. The voyage home to Vestfold carries no urgency beyond the practical desire to reach harbor before the autumn storms make the crossing complicated. Your shoulders hold the accumulated tension of 5 landings, 3 negotiations, and approximately 40 individual calculations about risk and reward, and the probable behavior of people whose motives you understand, but whose specific choices remain unpredictable until the moment they make them. The tension does not release, it settles, becomes part of the structure of your back and neck the way the ship's timbers settle into their particular shape under load. The taste of the day's last meal, dried fish and hard bread eaten at sunset, has faded from your mouth. What remains is the clean emptiness of night air breathed deeply and held. Your tongue rests against your teeth. Your jaw is loose. Small things, but present. You remain at the rail. The darkness of the northern sea spreads in all directions. The stars remain precisely where they were. The silver remains secure. The crew remains asleep. The ship remains afloat. The cold comes in slowly, the way it always does when you stand still long enough for your body heat to stop fighting it. First your hands, then your face, then the deeper cold that works through wool and leather into the spaces between your ribs. You shift your weight from one foot to the other. The deck creaks. The sound carries in the night air, not far, just present. Thorvald turns his head slightly at the stern, acknowledging the sound without responding to it. The breathing of 30 sleeping men creates a low rhythm beneath the sound of water against hull, individual breaths lost in the collective rhythm. You cannot identify which man breathes which way. It becomes a single thing, like the ship's timber sound or the wind in the rigging when the sail is furled. Your eyes adjust to the darkness until you can distinguish the line where the ship ends and the water begins. Not clearly, just enough to know the boundary exists. The rail beneath your palms is colder now than it was 10 breaths ago. The cold is factual, not hostile, just present. The season's work compresses into something you can hold in your mind without effort. The successful negotiations, the avoided conflicts, the tribute relationships that will hold through winter, because both sides understand the arrangement, and both sides benefit from maintaining it. 17 seasons of learning how to read, the moment when a negotiation can succeed, and the moment when it cannot. You have made no mistakes this season that will require correction next season. That is not the same as perfection, it is the absence of new problems. The kind of success that does not announce itself but allows you to stand at the rail in darkness without reviewing what went wrong. Halfdan shifts near the mast. Still asleep. The movement is automatic. The body adjusting position without waking. You recognize it because you have done it yourself 1,000 times. The small corrections that happen when sleep is deep enough to trust the ship's motion. The water continues its work against the hull, steady, repetitive. The kind of sound that stops being sound and becomes texture. You listen to it without focusing on it. Your attention drifts to the coldness of the rail, then to the breathing of the crew, then back to the water, then to nothing in particular. Thorvald stands. Crosses the deck. Stops 3 paces from you. Does not speak. You do not turn. He is there. You know he is there. That is sufficient. The stars overhead hold their positions. You cannot name most of them. You can navigate by them. That has always been enough. Your hands on the rail have lost their individual coldness. The cold is simply the temperature of the wood now. You and the rail and the night air share it without distinction. The silver beneath the steering platform has weight but no presence. Secured, accounted for, no longer something requiring attention. The negotiations that produced it have collapsed into single facts. Places visited, terms agreed, no complications remaining. You remember the monastery's receiving hall this morning, but cannot hold the specific details. The smell of stone and beeswax. The abbot's careful voice. Brother Aidan's assessment of which manuscripts had value. The memory is accurate but distant, like something that happened seasons ago rather than hours ago. Thorvald's presence near you is warmth without heat, the knowledge of another body standing watch. His breathing matches yours without either of you adjusting for it. 17 years of shared work have made certain rhythms automatic. The crew's collective breathing continues. You cannot separate it anymore into individual men. Just the sound of sleep happening in the practiced arrangement of bodies that know how to rest on a moving deck. The ship rocks, your knees adjust. The adjustment requires no thought. Your body has learned the motion the way it has learned to breathe. Automatic, continuous, requiring no attention to sustain. The cold has reached your core now, not uncomfortable, just present. The kind of cold that means you have been standing still long enough for your body to stop generating surplus heat. You could move, you could go below. You remain at the rail because remaining at the rail is what you are doing, and changing requires a decision, and decisions require effort. The northern coast is invisible now. The darkness has become complete enough that the boundary between water and sky has dissolved. You know the coast is there. You do not need to see it. The day's calculations have faded into outcomes, successful outcomes, the kind that do not require review. Your mind touches them briefly. The silver, the arrangements, the crew's safety, the ship's integrity, and finds nothing requiring correction. Thorvald's hand settles on the rail near yours, not touching, just present, sharing the cold of the wood and the darkness of the northern sea, and the accumulated weight of another season's work completed without disaster. Your breathing slows. The ship's motion and your body's rocking become indistinguishable. The stars overhead remain where they have always been. The weight of your body against the ship's rail has become indistinguishable from the weight of 17 seasons of identical nights. Your palms rest on wood that has been shaped by salt and used into something that fits your hands exactly. The grain runs parallel to the waterline. You know this without looking, because you have stood here often enough, that the knowledge lives in your fingers before it reaches your thoughts. The crew's breathing continues in the rhythm of men who have rowed together long enough that their sleep falls into the same pattern. 30 men. 30 separate lives that move as one unit when the work requires it. Right now the work does not require anything except this: anchored ship, calm water, the slow rocking that comes from tidal movement rather than weather. The silver is stowed. The season is complete. The arrangements hold. Thorvald is asleep somewhere behind you. You heard him settle into his usual place near the mast an hour ago, the small sounds of a man removing his boots and wrapping himself in wool that still smells like smoke from shore fires 3 days north. He will wake before dawn. He always does. The pattern holds. The monastery is dark, no bells, no torches visible on the wall. They are asleep too, or close to it. Monks who negotiated well, who calculated correctly, who will wake tomorrow to the same stone walls and the same prayers, and the knowledge that the arrangement continues for another year. You do not need to see the coast to know it is there. The sound of surf on rock reaches you across the distance between ship and shore, steady and low. The same sound that has marked every anchorage you have ever made along this stretch of water. 17 seasons. 17 autumns of returning north with silver and agreements, and the particular satisfaction of work completed without unnecessary violence. Your shoulders have stopped holding tension. You notice this the way you notice the temperature dropping. Not all at once, but gradually, until the absence of something becomes more obvious than its presence was. The stars are clearer now than they were an hour ago. No clouds, no wind worth noting. The kind of night where the ship sits so still in the water that you can hear the small sounds of wood adjusting to the cold, planking settling, rope tension shifting by fractions, the keel resting against sand and shingle in a pattern that will not change until morning tide. The darkness is complete enough that you cannot see the far shore anymore. Only the sound remains: surf, breath, the slow creak of a ship at rest. Your hands are cold now, not painfully, just the steady cold that comes from standing still, while your body's warmth drains into night air. You do not move to change this. The cold is simply another rhythm: warmth leaving, darkness settling. The long, slow descent into sleep that begins at the rail and ends whenever your body decides the standing is finished. Not yet. The water moves beneath the hull in rhythms older than any decision you have ever made. 17 seasons of this. The ship's motion becoming indistinguishable from your own breathing. The line between waking and sleep softening until neither state seems more real than the other. Your weight is shifted without you noticing, less on your feet now, more against the rail. The wood supports you the way it has supported you through 17 years of identical nights, the grain worn smooth by hands and salt, and the endless repetition of men who stand watch, because standing watch is what second in command means, when there is nothing left to command. The crew sleeps. You know this without looking, because the quality of silence has changed from the silence of men resting to the silence of men gone. 30 separate consciousnesses that have dissolved into the shared darkness of sleep, leaving only breath, and the small movements of bodies adjusting to cold and hardness, and the rocking that never quite stops. Somewhere in that darkness Thorvald is dreaming or not dreaming. The distinction does not matter. What matters is that he is there, has been there for 11 years, will be there at dawn when the work begins again. The pattern holds even in sleep. Especially in sleep. The monastery bell does not ring, will not ring until the monks wake for prayers that are still hours away. You have learned the rhythm of their nights the same way you learned the rhythm of tides. By repetition, by attention, by the simple accumulation of seasons, until knowledge becomes reflex. The cold has moved deeper now, past skin, into muscle. The kind of cold that makes standing feel like floating, that turns the boundary between your body and the night air into something negotiable rather than fixed. You do not fight this. Fighting would require energy you no longer have for anything except remaining upright. The stars have not moved, or they have moved too slowly for you to notice. Either way, they remain where they were when you last looked, scattered across darkness in patterns you stopped trying to read years ago. Navigation is Thorvald's trade. Yours is standing here until the standing is finished, watching a coast you cannot see, keeping a watch that no longer watches anything except the slow passage of a night that contains no danger and requires no decision. 17 seasons, 17 autumns of successful returns. 17 winters of knowing that the silver you brought back was enough, the agreements you made were sound, the violence you avoided was violence that would have cost more than it gained. Your hands have gone numb against the rail, not painfully numb. Just the gradual dissolution of sensation that comes from remaining still while blood moves elsewhere, to organs that matter more than fingers. To the center where warmth is hoarded against a cold that will not break until dawn. The sound of water against hull has become the only sound that exists, not louder, just more present. The way your own heartbeat becomes the only sound when you pay attention to it. Always there, always moving. The rhythm that continues whether you notice it or not. Your eyes are closed. You did not close them deliberately. They closed themselves while you were thinking about something else, and now opening them seems like more effort than the act is worth. The ship rocks. You rock with it. The distinction between the two motions has collapsed into simple movement, back and forth, rise and fall, the endless repetition of water and wood and bodies that have learned to move together without thought. Not asleep yet, but close. The sound of water against hull blending with the crew's breathing until you cannot identify which rhythm belongs to the ship and which to sleep. Both. Neither. The distinction has stopped mattering. Your body remains upright through habit rather than will. The rail beneath your palms might be holding you, or you might be holding it. The relationship has become reciprocal, mutual support between wood and flesh that no longer requires conscious participation. Cold. Darkness. The weight of wool wrapped around shoulders that have forgotten they are cold. Somewhere nearby, or far away, distance has become unreliable. 30 men breathe in patterns that overlap and separate and merge again into something larger than individual sleep. You hear this the way you hear surf, not as discrete sounds but as texture, the quality of air moving in and out of lungs that no longer belong to anyone in particular. The stars remain, or have gone. Your eyes are closed or open. Both states feel identical. Time has softened into something that no longer moves forward. Just persists, the way water persists, the way darkness persists, when there is nothing to interrupt it, and no reason to measure its passage. Your breath has synchronized with the ship's rocking without you choosing this. In, out, rise, fall. The rhythm older than thought, deeper than decision, the pattern that continues in sleep and waking, and the space between them that has no name. Warmth has gathered in your chest despite the cold, or because of it. The last place heat lives before it too dissolves into the general darkness, the shared temperature of wood and water, and men who have stopped fighting against night. No sound except breathing, no movement except rocking, no thought except the dim awareness that thought is still happening, barely, in some distant corner of a mind that has mostly let go. The whole world asleep. You among them. Almost. The distinction between the rocking of the anchored ship and the rocking of your own exhaustion collapsing into simple darkness. No difference anymore. Wood. Water. Breath. The three rhythms moving as one. Your hands have released the rail, or the rail has released your hands. Either way, the connection has dissolved into the general dissolution of all connections, all boundaries, all the small claims the body makes about where it ends and the world begins. Cold is everywhere and nowhere, inside and outside, the distinction gone. 31 men breathing, or 30, or 1. The mathematics have stopped mattering, because counting requires separation, and separation has become impossible when everything moves together in the same slow current toward the same dark depth. The morning still hours away. The ship rocks. You rock with it. And somewhere in that shared motion, wood and water and wool and the weight of 17 seasons becoming lighter than air, you stop holding on and let yourself fall into the oldest rhythm of all. Sleeping.